OBS is not connected to my Yeti. Here we go. Three, two, one. Hey, everybody. Tonight we're debating human evolution, and we are starting right now with Mark's opening statement. Thanks for being with us, Mark. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, James. I'll just share my screen and hopefully we can get that shared over.
Yes. Just going to adjust the size, and then we'll be off to the races.
Okay, just let me know when to start.
You betcha. We're ready in three, two, one, now.
Hello, my name's Mark Reid, and I have the pleasure of representing the case for human evolution today. I would like to thank Modern Day Debate and James for inviting me on, as well as my opponent, Evidence of God, for accepting the challenge of arguing against evolutionary theory today. While I have absolutely no doubt I could argue against myself, it's certainly more fun, as they say, with eager company. And I would like to thank you for showing up and at least considering the evidence they have to present. Now, first off, I just want to go through how evolution is so thoroughly entrenched as a theory in science that sort of 98% of scientists accept the theory to explain biological diversity. This theory is one of the two foundations of biology, along with germ theory of disease. It's interesting to note that the people who do not accept evolution overwhelmingly do not accept it due to religious reasons. There are many scientific and scholarly organizations from around the world that have issued statements in support of the theory of evolution. The American Association for the Advancement of Science, for example, it's the world's largest scientific society with more than 130,000 members and 262 affiliated scientific societies and academies of science. Including all in all, it's about 10 million individuals, and it's made several statements and issued multiple press releases in support of evolution. My point here is that evolution is not even really discussed among scientific circles anymore and has so much more evidence behind it that the matter is largely settled. Although, in fairness, there is arguments and disagreements about the mechanisms and how the processes occurred within that field. Since we're doing an on-trial case, it should be noted that evolution has already been tried in America multiple times. Every time evolution was found to be scientific and should be taught in science class, well, intelligent design was found to be a religious belief masquerading as credible science. This is no accident that the proponents of the intelligent design pseudoscience are all religiously motivated. This slide refers to the Snopes trial, or the Snopes monkey trial, as sometimes it's called, and it mentions how even textbook at the time accepted evolution of biology. There was no biology textbooks that didn't have evolution in it. I will go on to the Epson versus Arkansas. Now, this reached all the way to the Supreme Court, and the state was forced to allow teaching evolution as scientific fact. Again, the detractors of this were based their objections on religious reasons. And again, evolution as a concept won this trial as well in the Supreme Court. So I include McLean versus Arkansas because the ruling of the judge, Judge Overton, outlined the criteria for what it means to be scientific, and I think it's rather prescient of him to do so. It's interesting to note that evolution meets every single one of these criteria, whereas intelligent design and creation science does not meet any of these criteria that have been outlined as a requirement for science. Science being methodological naturalism. I'll note a couple of other notable trials. They're not, I'll give them an honorable mention. They're not really about human evolution, but they're about the failure of intelligent design to prove their case. My point is, every time evolution has been put on trial or involved in trial, it basically wins. The reason why is because it has a vast amount of evidence and support backing it, from fossil records to embryology to all kinds of evidence that reach the same conclusion. I don't have time to go through all of the evidence, but I'll go through just a couple of the very strongest evidence we have to support evolution, and their genetic evidence. So chimpanzees and bonobos are the closest relatives of human in the animal kingdom. Depending on how you're analyzing the DNA, it's about 98 to 99% similar, with the genes looking uncannily similar. What evolution says is that the organisms will have a nested hierarchy, with the hominidae or great apes following this pattern. Chimpanzees are closer to us genetically than they are to gorillas or orangutans, gorillas and orangutans are closer genetically to us and to chimpanzees than they are to monkeys. This is because the split off from monkey lineages, the gorillas split off from the ape lineages for the chimpanzees, and humans split off from the ape lineages as well as the chimpanzees. I want to talk about the main reason we know these splits happened when they did. And that's due to these things, endogenous retroviruses. Now, this is the basic structure of a retrovirus. A retrovirus has a RNA instead of DNA as its genetic material. It uses an enzyme called reverse transcriptase to make itself into DNA and to integrate itself into that DNA sequence. Now, an example of this retrovirus is the HIV virus. This makes the host replicate the virus when it transcribes the DNA sequence, as this sequence now includes the retroviral HIV sequence. Now, the important part to focus on is the structure of this sequence, which is the LTR, GAG, POL, ENV, and then another LTR. Now, these LTRs are long terminal repeats. They're like the scars, to speak colloquially, where the integrase has separated the host DNA, and it's a repeat of the DNA sequence that's completely unique to retroviral insertion. Now, we share 99% of these retroviruses with chimpanzees. Now, remember when I was talking about nested hierarchy? We found these ERV sequences in other, not just hominoids, but we found it in other monkeys as well, and indeed throughout the animal kingdom, but this is focused on human evolution. So, for instance, the Platyrrhine or the New World monkeys will have all of the bottom ones, the HERV1, ERV9, HERVH, all of the bottom ones, but none of the higher ones in it. The Catarrhine monkeys will have all of the ones in the second row, the HERVS, T, IP, but none of the ones above it, but all of the ones below that mark. The Hominidae will have all of the ones at the time of their split, but none of the ones above it. And finally, we get to the split off between chimpanzees, who share things like HERVK, and all of the other ones preceding it. So we can form a nested hierarchy tree by using this and know when these splits happened from when the ERVs are inserted into the gene. Okay, the second bit of evidence I have is chromosome 2 fusion. Since we have 2 less chromosomes, or 1 less pair than apes, it was predicted that we should find a unique signature of chromosome fusion in the genome of humans, if indeed we are diverged from their lineage. This is a picture of how chromosomes usually are. They have centromeres in the middle and telomeres on either end. Now, it was hypothesized that if there was indeed a fusion, we should get basically telomeres, which should be on the end in the center, and a centromere, which should be in the center, somewhere in the middle, and sort of on the right-hand side, you can see what it should look like. Now, what's interesting to note is that telomeres in the middle, they should be inverted. The telomeres should go one way, and then it would be flipped and mirrored and go the other. And that's exactly what we found. This is the great ape chromosome 1 to 3, going left to right, humans, chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutan. The telomeres are highly replicated groups of sequences that regulate duplication. Now, these get shorter as the cell replicates, so the prediction we should see a high density duplication, yet it should be degraded, because if it wasn't degraded, it would be a normal chromosome and not a fusion. So we do see these degraded but inverted sequences in the middle of chromosome 2, where they definitely should not be. We also see a vestigial centromere in the upper part of chromosome 2, where it shouldn't be either. This was a prediction that we did make and came true as we learnt more about chromosome 2. So in conclusion, the evolution is vastly supported by all scientists, almost all scientists. It's supported by multiple lines of evidence converging on the same answer. And the genetic evidence has demonstrated without a doubt that humans shared a common ancestor with other great apes. And I will return it and cede my time if there is indeed any.
Thank you very much for
Thanks,
that
James.
opening, Mark. And we're going to kick it over to Evidence of God. Want to say, folks, thanks for being with us. If it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, I'm your host, Dr. James Coons. We are excited to have you here. No matter what walk of life you are from, we appreciate you being here with us. Join the conversation. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future debates. And with that, we're going to kick it over to Evidence of God. Thanks for being with us. The floor is all yours for your opening as well.
All right, great. Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Modern Day Debates, for having me. Since the late 1800s, there's been a scramble to find the missing link. In light of this, frauds have been uncovered. To what extent, we don't fully know, as motives for such discoveries are constantly present: money, funding, notoriety, as well as the atheistic societal goals. Piltdown Man was a combination of a human and orangutan skull bone to give the appearance of a human ape ancestor with grinded down teeth. This fraud lasted for over 40 years as an accepted, peer-reviewed scientific missing link in the human evolution lineage. Nebraska Man, a tooth belonging to a species of pig, was accepted as a missing link for several years. Orseman, a donkey skull, was accepted as a hominid fossil for several years. Lucy, the famous Australopithecus afarensis pelvis, was cut to appear bipedal despite appearing the opposite in its original state, and the different ape bones made its way into the textbooks on Lucy's spines. As well as many apes that were accepted and promoted as human ancestors until they were finally admitted to just be apes. Interestingly, through the years of trial and error, skepticism of human evolution fossils did not increase due to all this misidentification and fraud. Instead, denying access to current accepted fossils for examinations increased. The fossils of hominids are generally scattered over great distances, mixed among other animals, including apes in many cases, broken in small, fragile, deteriorated pieces, then put back together and accepted. Despite discovering different ape bones among the accepted reconstructions, like in Lucy, showing how easy it is to misidentifications can occur, this should equate to the unreliability of these reconstructions, especially considering they're building creatures that don't even exist. In similar teeth and skeletal structures and a wide variety of creatures found scattered among the dig sites should put the integrity of these reconstructions into question. Yet the desperation of scientists in these fields is more than enough motive to lead to fraud and mistaken identification of the fossilized remains that has slipped through peer reviews by the same professionals we rely on to put these bones together and verify them. Hominid fossils' access is controlled, few are chosen that go through rigorous venting, and you can be certain they're carefully selected. The most qualified in the world would never had a chance at examining these fossils in person if their intentions were admitted to falsify the claim of human ancestry. This is an attempt at controlling misinformation. There have been many professionals in the fields that did not accept the idea that Artie or Lucy, among others, were even in the family tree, rather merely apes, and these were fellow believers of human evolution. Their concerns from observations were dismissed, not published, and definitely not taken into consideration in educational institutes teaching human evolution. Adding further evidence to motives to prove the idea rather than falsify the idea, as science is said to falsify in the search for conclusion. Much speculation and revising traits occurs as much of these fossils are missing, yet conclusions is made despite the vital portions of the fossilized remains not being present to conclusively determine the validity of the assumptions and speculations dictated by the scientists involved. Despite fraud being highly probable considering the controlling of information, motives from the governmental level down to field workers, financial and notoriety or power are the two biggest motives throughout human history to commit crimes against humanity, especially deception. Despite this being high probability conclusions given humanity's historical motives and actions, even in the search for human evolution, criticism of these conclusions are minimal and not accepted in academia. It's important to note that Nazi Germany called citizens questioning the narrative promoted by Hitler's scientists conspiracy theorists, misinformation spreaders, and science deniers. And we now know with scientific certainty that whites are not more evolved races. Darwin also put this idea forth in The Origins of Species in his era. This was called scientific fact. We now know this to be the complete opposite and ridiculous. Yet at one point, such opposition to this was considered misinformation. It's interesting when people set out to find a needle in a haystack and they're constantly coming back with this supposed needle. When is it time to question if it's really the needle from the haystack? Especially when anyone that questions it is called science denier or conspiracy theorist. Science should not be labeling attempted falsifications or skeptics of a mainstream narrative as stunting scientific progress, or controlling, censoring, or denying access to studies based on one's personal biases that diverge from the mainstream. There's something undeniably strange going on in these fields. As a rational skeptic, we should be willing to identify this, regardless how they feel about it. As a creationist, if evidence for God was being promoted in a questionable way, I would hope I would be honest enough to question the narrative and stand up for the truth, regardless where it led. But all that aside, I'm not going to be arguing from the perspective of a conspiracy theorist. Rather, I'm arguing from observable evidence that will hopefully cast reasonable doubt on the homogeneous line, putting forth an alternate observable explanation for what we observe, rather than shape-shifting chimps spawning humanity. The Bible states Adam and Eve were the start of humanity. Given the context of the biblical examination somewhere around 6,000 years ago, respectfully, the mainstream idea today, given by evolutionary theory proponents, is that Adam and Eve is debunked and scientifically inaccurate. However, when you merely dig into this idea, you hear statements like, it's unlikely, there's no reason to think. Then there's publishings like from Stanford University School of Medicine that indicates it's likely Y chromosome Adam and mitochondria Eve's existence overlapped. Whether or not you believe this couple were Adam and Eve from the Bible, there's no reason to assume they didn't live or breed together and spawn humanity. Chromosome 2 fusion. When considering chromosome 2 fusion, the signature of the aspect of humanity, a human inherits 23 chromosomes from the father, 23 chromosomes from the mother. Both the mother and the father have apparent chromosome 2 fusion from number 12 and 13 of the apes, supposedly. From what we understand about uneven chromosomes being passed down, not only do they cause birth defects, including growth development, cognitive impairments, organ failure, among many other genetic defects, trisomy and monosomy are subtraction or additions of the chromosomes in one's genetic makeup. Most often renders the individuals infertile, and in rare cases that they can breed, the chromosomes will more than likely fix themselves or cause the same genetic defects, including the high probability of being infertile in the offspring, in those that inherit the chromosomal defects. So unless chromosome fusion happened randomly in the male and the female sperm and egg at the same time, which from an evolutionary perspective is outrageous and impossible proposition, the likeliness of this trait surviving through natural selection is not just improbable, it's impossible. And to assume these observable defected traits caused by this type of issue would then go on to spawn humanity while all its counterparts died out is absolutely ridiculous to conclude. Furthermore, for the trait to somehow have been a marker of humanity, it would be necessary for those two to breed. Whether it happened in both Adam and Eve randomly at the same time, or it was passed to the siblings that would breed continually, and their children would breed, until eventually 46 chromosomes was established in the species. It places the two together as necessity. Chromosome 2 fusion, in my opinion, is the best evidence that Adam and Eve were together, or a genetically altered intervention as the Bible claims occurred. Red stem cells. Red marrow contains red stem cells that are required for the process to clone a human. There are several bones in the human body that contain red marrow that include ribs, breastbone, shoulder blades, collarbones, hip bones, skull, and spine. Given these options, there's only one that could be removed without causing physical disabilities, the rib, and it's also the only bone in the human body with a strange capacity to repair itself. The fact that God chose the rib to to create a human in the Bible is extremely and strangely coincidental, given what we now understand about the red stem cells' abilities in the medical fields. Human genetics. Human genetics can be affected by a range of factors: environmental, diets, genetic, substance abuse, and inbreeding. Selective breeding has been observed in many species. Humanity has been altering the physical traits and genetics of many species since our foundation. Human populations have also been affected through history, whether by coincidence or purposefully directed. Every trait that we observe in the Homo genus line can be explained by these genetic conditions: large, small craniums, tall, short statures, protruding jaws, upper and lower, protruding lips, upper and lower, protruding brow bones, large and small eye sockets, large and small torsos, different shaped noses, skeletal deformities, straight or bent lumbar, long and short fingers and arms. Any trait that you can associate with the Homo genus line can be observed and explained by these abnormalities in the genetics. Environmental factors like inbreeding and even alcohol abuse among populations over extended periods of time can account for these genetic defects and how they cause mutations in the gene, becoming a genetic factor. Depending on the genes of the original populators, it's not strange to see separate populations experiencing the same genetic mutations from the same practices. The Habsburgs were a royal family that ruled for several hundred years. They were known for their incest with cousins, particularly. They were an example how incest can affect skeletal makeups and instill these signature traits into the genetics. Medulla progathism, which is a genetic deformity not necessarily known for inbreeding, yet due to centuries of incest, was shown to instill the mutation into the genetics of the Habsburg family tree, rendering all the offspring of this family identifiable by these same genetic traits. The Egyptian royals also displayed similar traits among the mummies found from inbreeding. We can also observe these traits in animals. If the genetic mutations can be instilled in populations in hundreds of years, what implications would thousands of years have? These are
Just a quick
undeniable
check-in
evidence.
that you're at the 10-minute mark. I can give you a little
I'm
bit
at the 10
more,
minute.
but just so you know.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll
that's
just
fine.
finish
No
this
worries.
and then we'll move on. These are undeniable evidence that extended periods of inbreeding attribute to genetic mutations in populations, rendering similar characteristics in relatives differing from natural human traits. This is an example when considering the Homo genus lines. They appear to be human, yet these have these distinguishable traits among the populations. So I'll just leave it there. I'm over time. I didn't realize it took that long.
No
I still have like
problemo.
5 pages.
We are thrilled to have you here, folks. Want to say it is a true pleasure for me to get to be here. It's been a while, so I'm excited to be here. I hope you are. If you have questions, you can fire them into the live chat. There are 2 ways you can submit questions. 1, if you tag me with @ModernDayDebate in the live chat, that's 1. And then 2, if you want to push your question to the top of the list for the Q&A, you can use the super chat. And last but not least, don't forget to hit that like button. We appreciate your support. With that, we're going to jump right into the open dialogue. Gentlemen, the floor is all yours.
Yeah, I want to go into sort of, this whole idea that Lucy was cut to appear bipedal for a start. The researchers that sort of found Lucy, basically they had to cut it because it wasn't capable of walking or ambulating in any way from the current configuration that was found in. So they had to at least free the joint so it wasn't sort of curled up. But how do you explain all the other skeletons of Australopithecus afarensis that have been found, like Littlefoot, for instance?
So from my understanding, so Littlefoot, does he have what's the traits of Littlefoot?
What do you mean? What's the traits?
Like what are you saying, that he has a bipedal hip?
Yes. And that skeleton's, I believe, 80-something% complete. So all of the hips were found in a complete state. And I mean, we've found hundreds of these Australopithecines around there, not just afarenses, but other sort of intermediate species as well. It's not, Lucy isn't the only one we've found. I'm not sure of the exact number. I can certainly look it up.
So I'm looking at this here. I'm not seeing a bipedal hip. It's saying that they suggest, but that's what they said with Lucy as well, right? They suggested. So with Lucy's hip, if you can look that up and maybe screen share and show me the hip, but with Lucy's hip, it gave the appearance when it was found of an ape. It was the same as an ape, right? They said that it wouldn't work or whatever they said, and it was squished. That's what they said. But nonetheless, it was in the shape of an ape's hip, pelvis. So when he cut it into the shape of a human's pelvis, right? So that's the issue. Is you shouldn't. That's the thing. Is you shouldn't. He did, and you shouldn't be cutting. That's the thing. If you have to take the hip and cut it to reset it how you want to set it, then you shouldn't even be dabbling in with that. You should be dismissing that and saying, oh, okay, that was a bad example. Let's let it go, right?
It's not cutting it into the shape that you feel that it should be cut in. It's basically just freeing the hip so that it's not basically distorted, because in the position that it was, it would not be quadruped or biped. It would be absolutely nothing. But I'm sharing my screen to show Littlefoot, and you can see the hip and ball socket of Littlefoot here. How it basically, and this is, you can look at it and go, oh well, that doesn't look bipedal to me. But the scientists examining this have looked at it and gone, yes, that is bipedal. And I'm sure there's, they could say a lot more about it than I could.
So then,
definitely.
Then why when you look it up, as soon as I looked it up, it said it suggests that they're bipedal, right? So like you said, when you see it and you say, oh, that's not bipedal, but they looked at it, to use a word like they suggest that it's bipedal is much different from a word of certainty, right? Like it is bipedal. The evidence is it suggests, right?
Well,
so there's always
that's science for you. Science is tentative. It never takes an absolute out of anything. As I said in my sort of PowerPoint presentation, basically, that it is tentative, that it doesn't say it's the final word on anything. But we found over 400 skeletons of Australopithecus afarensis. So you will have to argue that all of them have been manipulated in some way.
Well, all these are found among scattered among different animals. All of these fossils are, right? So they're all found scattered among animals, then they're taken and put together. Was this skeleton found all in one piece? Or was it found scattered and then they put it all together? Because the examples that we've had, like Lucy, for instance, other ape bones have made their way into these skeletons and stayed there for decades, right?
So you don't think like paleontologists can put together skeletons? You don't think that they know how to put together
they
skeletons?
Didn't, though. That's the point. If they're,
What do you mean?
It's not about if I think they can. The point is they didn't. They actually put bones into skeletons that didn't belong there, and they left it there. They were peer reviewed. It went on for many years, and then they realized, oh, that doesn't belong there.
Yep.
So
and who found out that they had made an error?
Well, of course, the paleontologists, the people examining it did, but how many people peer-reviewed it first?
Well,
that's the issue.
Let's just have a look at this for a second. So you're sort of arguing that they left this stuff in intentionally in order to deceive.
No, that's not what I mean.
Well, that seemed to be what you were saying in your sort of opening.
Not at all.
You said the desperation
I think there is
et cetera, et cetera.
I think there is aspects of that. But that's not what I'm saying in this case. Mistakenly, they missed it. But that's the point. If they missed it mistakenly, then who's to say they're not missing this mistakenly? How can we have confidence in them when so many people have peer-reviewed these skeletons and passed off bones that didn't even belong there? Yet so many of these paleontologists approved it, put their stamp on it, they signed it, right? And it was wrong.
Yeah, but that's the whole point of science. You may as well say, hey, well, medically we thought that this medicine had no side effects, but how did it pass peer review? It's because it's not perfect and it keeps being reviewed and people keep writing papers about it. So with that over 400 skeletons, you get to the point where you're saying, well, the amount of errors that they would have to make would have to be insanely catastrophic, like just an overwhelming amount of errors, which is ridiculous because that's just Australopithecus afarensis. That's not even including Sediba. That's not including all of the other hominid ancestors like Cro-Magnon, Neanderthal, Neanderthal we can find their DNA in some of our DNA. So it's sort of what you're painting is this picture of, oh, a mistake has been made very early on, I might add. That has been sort of past peer review. So that cancels out everything in the field. And that's just not the case. We don't do that in any other field at all. So why should we be doing it in this one?
Because that's my point. So when they take the Australopithecus, they have the bones and they put this together. They have Lucy, so they have a preconceived notion of what she is. Then Lovejoy cuts her pelvis so that it fits. Now, when they go to these dig sites to find these fossils, they're mixed among all kinds of creatures, including other apes and humans in many cases they find out there. So when they're taking these bones and they're putting together, they have a preconceived notion of what they're looking for and how they're putting them together. It's like if you put the wrong puzzle piece in a puzzle, right? But somebody cut it, so you just keep putting it there, right?
Not right. No, not right. These people, they're not. No, that's just not what they did. They basically analyzed the way the bones were in Lucy, and they didn't cut into the bones. All they did was just free the socket. That's it. They did not change it in any way to fit their preconceived notion. That is not true.
Have you ever seen the video? Have you ever seen the video of Lovejoy cutting the pelvis? Have you ever seen it?
Yeah.
You're saying he didn't alter it? He admits to altering it. He admits to changing it.
No, he admitted to changing the configuration. He didn't change any of the bones.
He cut it down and he moved pieces out. He distorted it and he made it fit bipedal.
No. It was distorted. It would not have worked as a quadruped either. And this is the problem. You're sort of saying, well, that one so what happened was it was found in a configuration that would not have worked for any creature on the face of the earth. It would not be able to stand upright or stand on all fours or stand in any way. So he had to free that so it could stand in some way, right? Sure. And then upon freeing it, he did not change it to be bipedal. It just was bipedal. And you're saying that, hey, he changed it to be bipedal, and it just so happens that all over 400 skeletons discovered, they have made the same mistake for some reason.
Yeah, so if you watch the video, there's a video on it, and it's him. But hold on, let me address
any evidence of this, any evidence whatsoever.
Watch the video. It's his video. It's so I don't understand what you're saying. In the video, it says that it says that it was distorted, but it said as it was distorted, it says what you said too. It was in a way that it didn't make any sense, but it gave the appearance of a chimp or of an ape's hip. So don't you think it's logical that if it gives the appearance of an ape's hip, even if it is distorted and crushed, if it's more in line with the ape's hip, why would you turn it into a bipedal organism if it looks like an ape's hip, but there's some cracks in it? Why wouldn't you cut it and turn it into the ape's hip like it's facing, the way it's designed and it appears? He had to go out of his way to turn it bipedal.
Hold on. It wasn't designed that way, and they didn't have to turn it into a bipedal hip. They just freed it. And then the narrative that the creationists made up was that, oh, he cut the hip to be a bipedal organism. What actually happened was that it would not work in that configuration because it was distorted. So he had to free the hip, and it just was a bipedal hip. The creationist narrative is, oh, he cut it into a certain shape that would be bipedal, but it just wasn't. It wasn't a quadruped. It just wasn't. It wasn't a knuckle walker. It wasn't. The arms were too short. It did not walk on all fours. It's just that was the configuration it is in. But what you're currently saying is that even though these people who have devoted their lives to studying hominid hips, you're basically saying, oh, well, they were totally wrong and they just made it all up to fit their preconceived notions for some reason. And I don't know why, because you don't seem to have a shred of evidence for this. Just what you have been told about this video, which I might add, conflicts with what the person who did it and all of the experts say that he did.
Yeah. Can we screen share the video? Is that okay? just so we can just get it out of the way and it's done?
Yes, if you'd like. I think that the trick is the audio. It will get a copyright. If it's on YouTube, YouTube will recognize. So,
Oh, will it? Okay.
Yeah.
yeah,
But
I think that, you could show it and
But
then,
I'm not sure of the reason why, because we both agree that he made cuts, right? He had to cut it to free the hip, right? We both
but he
agree
made it
on that.
bipedal when it wasn't. It didn't. Can we
It
put
was
the video on and
bipedal.
put the text on? Can you do that, James? If I play the video and just do like the
yes,
captions?
yeah, you can do that.
Okay. Let
In
me
the
just
meantime,
try that.
folks, want to let you know Modern Day Debate is on your favorite podcast app, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. Check out the podcast, as all of our debates end up on the podcast within 24 hours of being live. That way, even if you're driving out in the middle of nowhere, no service, or maybe you're on a spaceship, no service, you can listen to debates on the go anytime. I'm plugging in over here. Folks, thrilled to have you here. And let me hit that screen share, and then they'll be able to see as well. It looks like a gentleman submerged in the mud. Okay.
Okay. Am I ready to go?
Yes.
Perfect.
Mhm.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah. So as he said there, right? It gave the
Mhm.
appearance of a chimp. Right. That's what it's
Yes.
saying. It gave it was anatomically in the position of a chimp, even though it was crushed and there was issues. It looked like a chimp's pelvis. So
Well,
why
it
would you cut
wasn't.
it to make it look like a bipedal pelvis when it already had its shape? It just needed a little. It was just crushed.
Yeah, so basically he said it was he didn't say it looked like a chimp pelvis. He said it was flared like a chimp pelvis, right?
Yeah.
Which isn't necessarily completely identical to a chimp's.
Sure,
But
but it's
the
more
reason
like.
why, hang on a second, hang on.
Sorry.
But the
Sorry. Go ahead.
reason why he cut it was because it had been crushed. It had all the hallmarks of being broken and crushed, probably by animals. But I mean, purely that's obviously speculative. We don't know that for sure. But what is true is that it was broken and put in a place that's anatomically impossible, right? So all he did was just reconstruct the bones just how they were before it got crushed, just mending all of those fractures, freeing up the bones that had been pushed together. That's it. He didn't make it into a bipedal thing. And this is sort of the level of disbelief you have to have. You also have to believe that this happened with 400 plus other skeletons, right? Littlefoot, suddenly, that's a bipedal hip. That is bipedal, and it's the largest, or sorry, most complete skeleton of Australopithecus athropoensis we have. And you have to believe that somehow that was mistaken, and the other 300 and something mistaken. This is just sort of disbelief and extreme skepticism in order to, Lucy isn't even the best afarensis fossil we have. It was just the first one found. That's all.
Yeah.
What happened with Littlefoot? What happened with Littlefoot? Why is that not a bipedal creature?
So I'm looking it up, and it's partial hips from the um from the Littlefoot's not even on there, but there are some other ones where they say they have partial hips, right? So, but even so, right, you still have to take into account that what they're doing here is taking a bunch of random bones from a dig scattered among all different animals, and they're putting them together. And like we've observed in the past, with they're letting bones slip in there that don't belong, or like Lovejoy did, he cut the specimen when he should have just moved on, right? Like back when Lucy was there, that's what we had. We had her. So for him to cut that piece of it to make her bipedal and then put it in textbooks, and at the same time having bones that didn't belong to her in her spine and putting that in the textbook, right? I'm not saying that they're necessarily doing it on purpose, but what I'm saying is they're making a preconceived notion and they've peer reviewed mistakes. So why should we just believe that this thing was bipedal, or that they're not making mistakes again in the future?
Look, like, this has been reviewed by, this has been peer reviewed. And the whole point is that we do catch mistakes through peer review. Those are mistakes were caught. I mean, Piltdown Man and Nebraska Man were very old examples. And, Nebraska Man, I don't think that even got into scientific literature. I don't think Piltdown Man may not have either. But we're talking from like the early 1900s that you're talking about here. We've learnt a lot since then. And the whole idea that they do this with over 400 skeletons somehow, which you haven't explained yet, is just ridiculous. You have no evidence of this. You're just claiming it to be true.
Because it's not 400.
I would like to move on away from afferences, because I don't think we're making any headway there. Maybe discuss why the genetic evidence doesn't point to common ancestry.
Sure. And we'll move on. I just want to say one thing, that the 400 specimens aren't full skeletons. They're not full fossilized skeletons, right? It's pieces of these things. So I'm going to look into these, and, I'm always willing to accept correction, right? So I'll look into some of these and I'll examine, and I'll take that into consideration. So we can move on from there.
So your claim is that afferences is just an ape. Is that what you're
I would think so. Yeah. That's
okay.
That's what I would think. And I know there were other people in the field that considered that they were apes, and there are some mistakes in Lucy and like Lovejoy, but we talked about all that. But we can move on. What did the genetic? Can you elaborate?
So I want to go into endogenous retroviruses, how they work, and why, how possibly that we can share sort of 99% of endogenous retroviral elements with chimpanzees. In exactly the same spot in the genome and exactly the same virus. Now, if these viruses infect, as retroviral sequences do, at random target insertion sites, why are they coming up in both us and, say, chimpanzees? And then, we have more in common with chimpanzees. Why are there less in common with gorillas and orangutans, and then less in common with monkeys? Basically, why do they form a nested hierarchy like evolution proposes?
Okay. So this is ERV PTERV1. This does not occur in humans. Searching the genomes of subset of the apes and monkeys revealed that the retrovirus had integrated into the germline of African great apes, old world monkeys, but did not infect human Asian apes like orangutan, simian, and gibbon. HERVKC4 produced the predicted tree topology. However, this tree only contains 3 taxa: humans, orangutans, and African green monkeys. Notably, the ERV was not detected in chimps and gorillas. So if orangutans are our most distant relatives, we should, like, if ERVs are what they say they are, these ERVs should be inside of the chimp. If it's inside of the orangutan, which should be inside of us, right? This is the line that it goes down. But we're seeing in several ERVs, and there's probably a ton more. I had to read for hours just to get those two. There's probably dozens more of these. You're seeing that it's not in chimps, but it is in orangutans and humans.
Yeah.
So that's skipping the whole generation. So if it can't hit twice, it should be in a chimp, right? If this is what they are, then ERVs like this should be present in the chimp. If it's in the orangutan and the humans, it has to be in the chimp.
No, it's because that once something diverges from the line, it basically can it's just as open to mutation as any other part of the genome. So individual lineages can mutate that ERV so it no longer either A, looks like the ERV, it loses the GAG EMB pole, or it does some kind of transcription error that omits that section, or it does some kind of replacement, because mutation can affect any part of the genome. A lot of these genomes, they're beneficial through co-option, right? So the ERV is in there, and basically mutations have allowed it to perform a beneficial function for us. And there's a really good paper called Switching Sides, how we co-opt these viruses to work for us. Most notably in the case of, say, the HIV retrovirus, which we've seen infect, and then some people have a mutation that makes them shut down the copying effect of the virus, but it still has a preventative effect for other viruses, because that's what HIV does. It prevents other viruses from taking control. So it's not unusual for there to be one or two skips, but you're avoiding the question, why do we share them at all? So you've gone from, like, I've asked you a question and you've gone to, well, there's this other thing. Why are they there at all?
I was explaining that they do skip the lineage. So the idea that ERVs are exactly what they say they are is not necessarily true, because you can say it mutated out, but the fact is it's not present. And they say that ERVs, right? Like, that's proof. It's there. It's in this guy. It's in that guy. This is proof. And then we get one that shows that it's not exactly what they say it is. And like you said, there's beneficial ones, right? So ERVs do exist, but to the extent there's a lot of things that humans don't understand. So if we're pointing at all these and saying this is what they are, and we're finding them productive in the genome, and we're finding them skipping different members of our supposed family, this is an issue with this, right? So why are they in our lineage at all? Well, we don't necessarily know what they are. There's a lot of productive ones. We do understand how retroviruses integrate. We do understand that. But to say that all of these are ERVs when there's discrepancies like I just read and many more, this poses a problem, especially when they're beneficial and useful. So today they might say they're all ERVs, but since they're productive in our lineages, and that's the thing too, these productive ERVs in our lineages are across the board, right? So like, that's what you said, they mutate out and everything. So when you have productive ERVs and you see the same change in a whole bunch of different of the family tree, supposedly, then you have to ask yourself, like why is it those are fine, those didn't mutate, those integrated all in the same way across the board, but then when we find ones that are discrepancies, well, that just mutated out, right? The ERVs, I think one day we'll discover the ERVs aren't quite exactly what they say they are.
Well, again, you've got no evidence for
I
this.
do. I just told you.
We've got evidence of ERVs becoming productive. We've got evidence of the ERVs being copied into lineages and them being fixed. We've got evidence of all of this. In fact, not only that, but there's also the Phoenix retrovirus, where they got the HERVK very, very recently introduced to human lineages, that they've reactivated into a virus. So this whole idea that, oh, they're something else, they're this other thing because they're productive, is blatantly wrong. And you're just making it up, because we've not only seen them become productive, we've actually reactivated one into a virus. Now, it wasn't a very strong virus, probably because, it's been dormant for ages, but it still was able to propagate, bud, and produce RNA sequences to go and infect other cells. So this idea that you have that, oh, it must be something else and we're going to find out what it is along the road, I'm sorry, that just doesn't hold any weight. It doesn't hold any water as to, our research done on these things. It's sort of more just a, well, I don't believe it. Well, that's great, but that's not evidence that they're not remnants of viruses that have been copied into our DNA early on in our lineages, because they do follow this nested hierarchy. And those discrepancies that you're talking about, they're not really discrepancies when you understand how mutation works and sort of how the mechanisms of mutation works.
So that's what you said. Like, I'm not saying that retroviruses don't exist. I'm saying that to the extent that we say what they are may not be the case, right? And we can see that with how they become productive. So you said they
What about
reactivated one, right?
do you
That's
think
great, but why don't
do
they
you think in,
reactivate them all?
do you think that retroviruses are endogenized?
I mean, like uh, maybe not all of them. Like that's what I'm saying is we don't know
What do
exactly
you
what they are.
mean?
So
Maybe not
so
all of them.
So,
What
like
do you
an
mean?
endogenous retrovirus, it integrates itself into your genetic coding, and it
Right.
activates and it infects other parts of your genetics, right? Or instills in that part and
No,
affects
no, 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 no,
other
no.
cells. I mean,
Okay.
right?
No, no, no. I see where your mistake is. So, endogenous retroviruses, they have to infect the germline, either the sperm or the egg. And the reason why we know that is because they're copied into every single DNA sequence in your body, right? So they're absolutely in every single cell in your body. So if you think about it, when a human grows from like a single egg, it replicates, it splits and then splits and then splits. So the only way that can happen is if one infection hit a germline, either a egg or a sperm, to infect that genome with that retrovirus, because we find it in any one. And that's kind of endogenization when it becomes throughout your entire body because the initial cell was infected. Now, it becomes fixed in the lineages when that provides some sort of advantage, and then basically that becomes a normal part of that species DNA.
Okay,
So
yeah, yeah.
it doesn't infect other parts of your body. It's already there.
Every cell. So then the deactivation would have to happen in the sperm or the egg as well, right? If it's in every single
What do you
cell in
mean?
your body. So if you're going to get a deactivation, like you said, a mutation that goes away, right? Like the ones I explained, you said that it got rid of it, right? This is going to have to take place in the sperm and egg as well, right? In order for it
Well,
to deactivate and come out of your cells, it's got to take place before all your cells are established, right?
it depends on what happens. I mean, it will deactivate at some point, yes, but that might be endogenized, but still be a virus at some point. It's just that if the creature propagates, it will still carry that indelible viral sequence onto its descendants. And at some point, it mutates. There is a mutation, a point mutation, or some kind of other mutation that hits that retroviral that will turn it off. And sometimes it gets a beneficial property when it mutates because that retroviral sequence is just as prone to mutation as any other part of the genome.
Okay, yeah. So I'm trying to follow here. But in order for it to, if it's in every one of your cells and it multiplies in all your cells, it's apparent in all your cells, right? Then in order to deactivate it, it must take place while you're in the sperm or the egg prior to your cells being created, right? It can't just deactivate when you're living and then all of your cells are going to follow this path, right? So it's got to happen prior to your cells being established when you're a sperm or an egg. That's just like you're saying it has to be placed in at this point. This is where it comes in and infects all your cells from your mother or father, right? They got infected and they've passed it to you through the sperm and the egg, and now it's integrating into every cell, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the same would have to be said for it to deactivate, right? Like the one I read, you said that it deactivated or it mutated. That's why it's
No,
skipping
no.
them.
It can pass on generations being an active virus. It's just because when the DNA sequence transcribes, it transcribes that virus into it, whether it's active or not. It doesn't have to be deactivated in the same generation as the infection.
Yeah, sure. But it has to
Uh,
be
uh, well,
deactivated
yeah,
prior to your cells, prior to your cells being established, right? So when you're a sperm, you have this in your genetic coding, right? it's passed
Sure.
on. This retrovirus comes from your parents, right?
Mhm.
So it's established in your cell. And then as you grow, your cells begin to multiply. You become an organism, right? Or like a human or whatever. And then your cells multiply, but that retrovirus is in every cell. So it has to start. That's what I'm trying to get at, is it has to start when you're a sperm. And in order for it to mutate and shut off, it would also have to start as a sperm because it's shutting off in every single cell. So every single cell is going to show this, or sorry, rather not show this mutation or any hint of it. Right? So it's got to happen in the sperm. This is what I'm getting at, or the sperm or the egg. Prior to your cells being created, it needs to be activated or it needs to be shut off. Either way, you can't, otherwise, if it's shut off in one of your cells, it's not going to shut off in every cell if you're a living creature, right?
So hold it. Well, I'll explain. At one point, there will be organisms, a part of populations and part of lineages that will not have an active virus in their DNA, even if they were sort of born with an active virus. At some point, there's going to be a certain select amount of the population that won't. So natural selection selects for these populations because it's an crazy benefit to have, something like a virus that doesn't allow you to be infected, yet doesn't actually propagate. So I'm not saying that, it all just happens at once. What I'm saying is that these retroviral elements, they get into lineages a lot. Like 8% of our DNA is retroviral sequences. And sometimes that virus continues down and is an active virus to the descendants, but at some point a mutation happens and a offspring is born that has a mutation that turns it off. And I'm not saying, but you're sort of confusing by saying you have this, and it's like, well, no, it doesn't happen in one member. It can happen sort of one part at a time. It doesn't all have to happen at once.
So, like, thanks for explaining that. So, like the ERVs that I read there, we have chimpanzees and gorillas, right? The orangutan is next to the gorilla in the family tree, right? And then the chimpanzee is down the line closer to humans, next to the human, right? So, for this to deactivate in a gorilla, right? How did it pass on to the human? Or if it happened on its own time frame, what are the odds of two separate ERVs deactivating in a gorilla and a chimp?
Hold it. What do you mean by deactivate? Because when you're talking about an active viral sequences, it's producing RNA designed to infect other cells. So all of these viruses are deactivated. They don't
mutated out. I'm getting at what you said before. It's mutated out of the line. That's what I'm saying, deactivated. So I'll use a different word, mutated out of the line, right?
Well, what I want to get back to is how did they get into the chimpanzee DNA and the human DNA at exactly the same spot with exactly the same RNA sequence for the virus? That's what I'm getting at. So I feel like you're sort of going off right now to, here's this other thing that I have to explain. But I want you to explain to me how they got there.
So that is what I'm trying to explain with these ERVs, is if that's what I'm getting at. So if the gorilla is next to the orangutan and it's not present in the gorilla, but it's present in the human, it's not present in the chimp, but it's present in the orangutan, right? That's what I'm saying is, so if we can observe these things aren't quite as in line as how they say they are in some circumstances, then that puts the idea into question of what it actually is. Are some of them retroviruses? Yeah, well, it has to be explained how it's skipping lineages and shutting off twice. But you're saying that it randomly shut off twice, or sorry, mutated out twice in two completely different species throughout the lineage, but it's jumping and skipping people.
I don't think you're represented completely, because the orangutan did not, like, you're not putting the gorilla isn't next to the orangutan so much as the orangutan split off. Then the gorillas split off the lineage, because we're looking at this as in lineages, not sort of which is higher or lower on this thing. These animals split off, and we split off, and for chimpanzees, branches diverge. They don't have this sort of thing that you're thinking of, like brothers and sisters kind of thing. That's not what happens. But if you do, some of these are that mutations have weeded out these remnants kind of thing from the lineages. It happens. There is an explanation. You're saying we need an explanation. There is an explanation. It's just that you refuse. But what I'm wondering, again, that you're getting away from is how come these retroviral sequences are in both us and chimpanzees? I want you, look, I'm not going to let you get away. How did they get there in the first place?
That's what I'm trying to explain to you, is maybe some of them, perhaps, like we've established in how they're just disappearing from certain lineages, perhaps they're not quite what we think they are, and they've managed to grab into these spots for whatever reason, or they were established there, as we see many of them are productive, right?
So what are they?
I don't know what they are. But how are they not? How are they skipping lineages? Right?
I've already
how are they jumping out?
I'm not going to explain it again.
You haven't explained it.
No. I've already explained it. I'm not explaining it again. You've got your answer, but you're sort of saying, well, I don't know what they are, but they're not what the scientists and all of the experts and all of the people studying it say they are, for no reason whatsoever. What makes you think they are something else, even though you don't know what that is?
Because there's proven ERVs. This is just two of them. There's probably dozens, maybe even hundreds, who knows, of these ERVs that show that it's skipping lineages. So it's not exactly what they think it is. If there's ERVs that are showing up non-present, and you're just saying, oh, maybe it mutated out. Well, maybe they're not what they thought they are, right?
I don't
That's the same thing.
I don't understand what you mean by skipping lineages. So because like genetically, that's like saying, well, I don't understand why I have a gene for baldness and my mother did not. You know, it's skipping a lineage. I don't understand what you mean by that, because lineages are how we track the ancestors down to the sort of modern day equivalents today. So I don't even know what you mean by that.
Yeah, so it's skipping in the sense of it does not occur in humans. Searching the genomes of the subset of apes and monkeys revealed that the retrovirus had integrated into the germline of African great apes and old world monkeys, but did not affect humans and Asian apes like orangutan, simian, and gibbon. Or the other one, however, the tree only contained 3, humans, orangutans, and African green monkeys. The ERV was not detected in chimpanzees and gorillas. That's what I'm saying. It's just jumping around everywhere, right? So yes, it's present in the same place in these classes, but we're seeing it jump from old world monkeys and gorillas to orangutans.
But hold on a second. That admitted that they were retroviral elements in the germline of all of these apes, including humans.
Because that's what they call it. That's what their conclusion is.
That's what it is.
But that is clearly showing that it's not quite what you're saying.
The resource that you're drawing upon agrees with me that they are viruses inserted into the germline of the ancestors of all of these types. So you are actually using the foundational knowledge of, hey, ERVs are an ancient retrovirus that inserts into the ancestor of all hominids in order to say this in the first place.
Yeah, but what am I supposed to use? There's no research against it. This is their preconceived notion that these things are what they're saying that they are. And then you see them skipping lines, right?
And it's like saying... That's like saying there's no evidence for what I'm saying, so I have to use the evidence for what you're saying instead.
That is evidence for what I'm saying. That
no,
right
it's
there,
not.
Yes, it is.
Do the people that wrote that, do they agree with you?
They agree with me in the sense that there's some weird jumping and skipping going on as something that only hits the same place once.
They don't think that it's not a retrovirus, do they?
No, that's what they call it. But they also are acknowledging...
So they agree that evolution through humans is proven by retroviral elements inserted. So you're basically cherry picking... No. You are cherry picking one article. No, not according to that. According to the people that wrote that and the evidence that they showed, we're completely right. You're just basically cherry picking one thing that is explainable and probably explainable in that article. If you want to share your citation, I would really love to see it. And saying, no, I don't know how to interpret this, so I have a problem. So what?
No,
well, give me the citation. We'll see if they agree with you or me.
Sure. So I just want to say that using those is how we have to conclude these things. The problem is yes, they agree they're ERVs. Absolutely. I'm not saying that. You're using a fallacy here. You're saying that because they agree with, or because they say it's what you say it is, then I can't point out the fact that there's discrepancies in what the narrative is based on what they're saying about these things. That's what's going on. I'm not citing them because they're retroviruses. I'm citing them because they're retroviruses, right? And yes. I'll give you the link though here. It's PubMed.
What is the fallacy that I'm using? What's the fallacy?
I'll look it up. I'm not sure which one it is. It's the fallacy.
Well, I can point out the fallacy you're using, which is called the stolen concept. So basically, it's when you use evidence whose very concepts argue against you. So basically, it's when you say, hey, this evidence shows that your position is incorrect. And the very concepts of that evidence, the original concepts, what the foundation of that evidence is flawed. You're stealing the concept. So this is kind of what you're doing.
I disagree with you completely. I'm using the ERVs. Yes, they acknowledge that they're ERVs. I'm using the ERV information to show a discrepancy in the ERV narrative. That's what's going on here. I'm not saying that I disagree with them that they're ERVs. Sure, that's what they think they are. They're ERVs, whatever. But the point that I'm pointing out is the discrepancy in the supposed lineages. If they're jumping around in random places, it's not following the narrative that it should if an ERV is passed down through orangutan all the way down the line to the humans, right? But the old world monkey shouldn't be in there. But then we see this and we see it's jumping around, yet it only hits the same place once, right?
It's not a narrative, it's research. You can throw it in the Zoom chat if you want, and I can have a look at it. But, I can guarantee you that this paper disagrees with you. So why you're sort of using a paper that disagrees with you is this, which I've seen before, which is cherry picking in order to say, hey, there's a problem here, and we may or may not have an explanation for it, but you still have said, well, because we may not have an explanation here, which I don't know, I haven't looked at the paper, like it necessarily is the case that all of these other retrovirals, which you don't know how they got there, you can't explain it, you are basically taking a faith-based position that someday you'll find out there's something else. And I don't think that's good enough for a trial. It's like saying, hey, this guy was found with the murder weapon in his hand, but I have this for no reason whatsoever. I don't know how it happened. He was framed.
But you're doing the same thing. You're saying, I'm showing you a case where it doesn't line up with your narrative or the narrative of evolution. And you're saying, well, maybe this happened. Maybe that's exactly what you said. Oh, maybe it disappeared. Maybe it disappeared in two completely different lineages of ape that it should have been in, according to this study that I'm supposedly cherry picking.
Somehow it happened. The citation. I'm not seeing the citation.
It's PubMed. You're gonna have to read through it. That's the citation. It's PubMed.ncbi. I read it for hours. I had to read through them just to find two, because you can't find things like that. You Google it, you're not going to find it. Right?
PubMed is a journal. I can't find anything just being told PubMed. If you have a link, you can just throw in the chat. I can't read any, like if you just say that journal has literally millions of papers in it. It's PubMed.
Here, hold on. I have it here somewhere. That was the wrong link, anyways. It is PubMed, but.
In the meantime, now might be a good point for me to share, folks. I have to share, I'm very excited about our new sponsor, Soylent. I don't know if you can see this little box here, folks. Oh, the lighting is ruining it. But my dear friends, I highly encourage you check out the soylent.com/modern-day-debate link to get your bottle of Soylent in the description box below. I'm just kidding. That wasn't real. Although this
Are you a
is,
soy boy, James? Are you a soy boy now?
you
Is
know,
that
I
what you are?
actually, they're not actually a sponsor. I made that up. That was a joke. But I
Okay.
did buy these as a gag, and I've got to tell you, they taste like Ensure, like the old folks drink, you know. I expected, I mean, you know, anyway, I'll
So
give you
yeah,
a
if you
chance.
Google it.
Go ahead. Evidence of God.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, if you go to PubMed and you type in the ERVs, you want to write the ERVs down, and then
Uh,
you're welcome to go into PubMed and type in the ERVs, and it'll come up, and you can read all about them. Do you want to write them down?
You know, it's a trivial to copy and paste what you're actually looking at, but I'll give it a try. I mean, can you
It's
give me at least the title of it?
yeah, it's I don't know. I was reading on PubMed. That's where it's from, man. I don't. I didn't save the link. I just told you I read through it for hours, right? I didn't. There's a just when you go to ERVs and you got to read through it. You can Google these ERVs and see it yourself now, but you have to go in and
So
find them first.
what you're expecting me to believe at the moment is that
Oh, they're not
these
real.
scientists
Good move.
these scientists went through all of this and studied in deep depth the hierarchy of these ERVs, and yet they disagree with your conclusion, but for some reason they have presented that it completely destroys ERVs in our lineages for some reason, but they came to the opposite conclusion because you think there's a problem.
It's not that I think there's a problem. These ERVs are putting the idea into question, whether they want to accept it or not. There's lots of things,
Oh,
like I read in my opening, they accepted pretend evidence of human evolution for
look,
many
no,
years, decades.
there's lots of questions in these fields. As I said, you know, it's the fundamentals are kind of settled, but they still have disagreements. They have disagreements over the rate of mutation. They have disagreements over the substitution rate. They have disagreements over where something should be located within the phylogenetic tree. In fact, retroviruses are one of the ways we can tell where something is in the phylogenetic tree, because we can trace where retroviruses have been inserted. Now, it's not enough for you just to stand up and say, well, I don't believe it for some reason, and
That's
they
not what I
got
said.
there somehow that I don't know how, but because they are outlining, hey, this is a problem, we've got to, you know, fit this into the model somehow, that it somehow disproves all of the overwhelming evidence that those are retroviral sequences, which the paper you're quoting absolutely agreed with.
Yeah, most of the retroviruses in the paper when I was reading were what is to be expected. They were in line with their theory.
Yeah.
That's how it was. But then you come across, like, of course they accept it. But then you come across these, and they just say that, and it was let go. It's just let go, right? Why isn't there papers coming out
I don't think
explaining
it's
these?
let go.
That's
I don't
so.
think
Where
it's
are
let
they?
go.
Why aren't they being explained in academia? Why
You,
aren't people saying, "What is this all about"?
well, that's what they do in academia. That's
Not
all
those
they
ones.
do in academia. Oh, you think nobody is looking at these in academia? They're just ignoring them somehow. Is that what you
As
think?
in accordance with evolution, yeah, I do. I
And
had
of
to read
course,
through it myself. Why couldn't I just Google which are ERVs are out of place? Why couldn't I find papers that came up and said, studies and peer reviewed? Yeah, it's out of place. Why is it like this? This is why.
were you in Google Scholar or just Google?
I go to Google Scholar. I go to Google. I try them all.
Yeah. So maybe you need to work on your search parameters, because that is, you can find that stuff.
Okay,
Like, I
but
don't understand why, like, you sort of found it, but research isn't like, I wanted the website for, YouTube. It isn't something that people search for every day. Yeah, research requires digging through algorithms and going to these papers and journals and stuff. You're basically saying, like, I want it to come up first thing. And it's like, well, no, research doesn't work. Like, I don't know. What are you talking about? You're basically saying, I want the search algorithms to represent my conspiracy theories.
it's
Well,
not a
tough. It
conspiracy
doesn't work
theory,
like that.
dude.
It isn't
It
conspiracy
is not.
theory.
It's true. I just read it to you. It's a real
No,
ERV that's out of
the
place.
the idea that because in the early 1900s and 1800s, scientists made mistakes on fossil anatomy of early hominids, that somehow all of these scientists in all of these fields throughout the world have got stuff wrong and nobody's bothered to check it. And according to you, nobody's looking into it is a conspiracy theory. It is.
Lucy was discovered in what, the 80s, right? And they had the wrong bone inside of her. And then they cut her pelvis sideways, and nobody said nothing about it. Everybody just accepted it and put it in the textbooks. So yes, there is absolutely a specific narrative going on, and even in academia, there's organizations that protect, like your opening statement, right? You said that it went to trial and evolution, and they threw intelligent design out, right? But there's lots of people out there that are working on intelligent design in the sciences, but they have to fund themselves. There's organizations that have to fund themselves. There's no funding that's going to offer intelligent design, right? So when you say it was thrown out, sorry?
No, they're not. There's not tons of people working on intelligent
There's organizations like Answers in Genesis has people, scientists.
It's a tiny, tiny amount of people, and they're basically propped up by certain people with degrees that are given tons of money by the religious organizations that back them. What they don't get, because they don't actually make any kind of scientific discoveries, is they don't get accreditation by these, scientific places like the Center for the Advancement of Science and things like that, because it is a pseudoscience. And that has been tried in a court of law and found again and again that creation science is not science. It's a pseudoscience. Doesn't count as science.
Well, they were making pretend fossils and cutting Lucy's hips and peer reviewing wrong bones in certain animals and collecting fragile components of apes mixed with pig's teeth and all kinds of different stuff, putting that together. But then they were coming out and saying, we need to protect what we're doing here. But anyone that wants to look into intelligent design as a scientific exploration, well, that's a pseudoscience, and the court ruled on that. Because there's a narrative to push, there has been a narrative to push evolution since Darwin wrote his book. There's been a scramble to find this. That's why we saw Piltdown Man and Orse Man. And
what makes it a science and not a pseudoscience? What makes it a science?
There's lots of things in the observable world that is far more in line with an engineer than it is with random chance just organized by nothingness.
Do you know what science is? Do you know what science is?
Yes, it's the exploration of the natural world.
Right. So in what universe is creation science basically saying that, hey, a supernatural deity did all of this stuff, is an investigation of the natural world?
Because when you look at things in the natural world, like for instance, like the complexity of a cell or something like fine tuning, the origins of the universe, all these things have a big like missing portion. But we see organization and intelligence and complexity. All these things are there, these components that we can only explain with engineering or intelligence. Right? It's all there, but yet we won't even consider the possibility that something orchestrated the universe. It's natural in the sense that what we observe has a stamp of engineering on it, right? So if you want to explore, you can. It does. Like, can you give me another example other than an organism that just randomly comes to be with the most complex coding on Earth? Just complexity and organization and everything just combined together to make this mind-boggling thing that we can't even recreate with our technology, and it just all happened by itself, randomly showed up.
Okay, so complexity is not what shows design, right? Beside an organism that just randomly, number one, natural selection isn't random. Mutations are random, but natural selection is deterministic. It actually determines how something comes out, and that's determined by the environment and the selective pressures that are on it, as well as other mechanisms like sexual selection and genetic drift and things like that. There's a number of mechanisms, but there's certainly not genetic drift is random, but natural selection is not. And so you're sort of saying, hey, well, it's all this complexity. Yes, but some of that complexity is highly inefficient, which we shouldn't expect from design. A lot of the mechanisms are incredibly inefficient. Like, for instance, there's flaws in how our eyes work. There's flaws in the way that the recurrent laryngeal nerve goes around your aorta and back up to your neck to make to cross a gap. There's incredible inefficiencies all over the body. What it reeks of is bottom-up design, when multiple systems come together. So it's not this top-down, everything was designed. It was multiple different systems working together, and that can explain how the human life came about. Just because you're incredulous that it could happen through mutation, natural selection, and the other mechanisms that we've said, doesn't mean that that's wrong. It's just you're incredulous about it.
Yeah, so I understand that natural selection is not random in the sense that it's the given circumstances that drives whatever mutations, right? But the beginning of it, like what drives it, is randomness, right? So it randomly comes to this point, and then natural selection goes ahead and pushes it one way or the other. But it's driven by it's randomly driven. So at the end of the day, evolution and everything we observe is supposedly a random, just chance thing, right? So
yeah, but so is artificial selection. I mean, you pointed out yourself in your opening about selective breeding, right? Which is random mutations. That's the thing. Random mutations crop up. We breed the ones that have the mutations that we like together, and that gives us the new breeds. So through your own admission, random mutation by a different mechanism, a different selection mechanism, still gets to change by your own admission in your own opening, because you mentioned selective breeding.
Yeah, selective breeding, but through selective breeding is driven by an intelligence, right? So there is natural selection in the wild, but we selectively breed things. We selectively bred almost every creature that exists to get what we wanted out of it. So it is an intelligence that drives it. An intelligence will get us breeds that evolution wouldn't. Like, for instance, the dogs that have hair that they can't see and walk.
We don't design the genome, though. We don't get in there and design the genome of this breed of dog.
No, we just drive it.
We drive it, right. So we just wait for the mutation to come up. Just say we want a bigger dog that has longer legs because we're using it for hunting, whatever the example, right? We don't actually get in there and change it so that dog comes up. We wait for a random mutation on certain dogs that shows a larger dog with longer legs, exactly what we want, and we breed them together. And then we wait for a mutation to occur that gives them that trait again, and we breed them together. All I'm saying is that same thing occurs. So your argument that, hey, it's random originally because of the mutation, that applies just as much to selective breeding as it does to natural selection. It's still random occurrences of mutation. It's just instead of the selection mechanism being us choosing what we want, and that's the intelligence part, instead the environment just kills off whatever doesn't survive. Or there's sexual selection. And coupled with genetic drift, which is sort of random animals surviving through chance, and that's the chance part of it. I'm not saying there is no chance in it. Obviously there is. But it's deterministic and mostly dependent on the environment. It's not this random thing that you're talking about.
But yeah, so when we're doing that selective breeding, and even in natural selection, what it's doing with the mutations and the changes is it's utilizing the information that's already there. There's information coded in these cells and in these species already, and all we're doing is utilizing information that already exists, right? It's the same like when you said the complexity and organization don't equate to intelligence. Can you give me an example aside from an organism where complexity and organization doesn't come from intelligence? Because I can give you a billion examples just looking around my house, but I can't give you one example where it doesn't happen. And this is the most complex coding system that we even know of, right? And there is fallen, and the Bible predicts that man has fallen. So if we found
just a sec, hang on a sec, hang on. You asked me for examples of complexity where it hasn't been designed, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so snowflakes are incredibly complex. Weather patterns are complex. You know, there's a ton of things out there which are complex. Sure.
Yeah. So you're using the design, you're using the creation though, right? You're
using the creation.
So,
What do you mean?
so that's what I'm trying to say is everything that we observe in nature, right? Whether it be the beauty in a snowflake or whatever it is, everything that we observe in nature, according to the biblical narrative, was designed. So I'm
Okay, hold
asking
on a
you to
sec.
give me
Hold
an
on, hold on,
example.
hold on. But what's like if everything is designed, can you give me an example of something that's not designed?
No, no, I can't.
Then how do you tell what's simple from what's complex as what's designed from not designed? If
Because all
everything's designed, hold on, if everything's designed, then even the simple stuff like a rock or just a simple crystal matrix, that's designed as well. So you're saying complexity is the hallmark of design, but if everything's designed, then simplicity is the hallmark of design as well.
sure. They can both be the hallmark of design. Whether it's see, that's the thing is you don't simplicity. No, but it's like let me explain. Simplicity
Hold it,
is
but
kind of
that
well. Let me
that
explain, man.
okay,
Simplicity
so
is
yeah,
like
go.
simplicity is like it's designed whatever. Who cares? But then when you get into complexity. Right, that's where the issue is. The simplicity is irrelevant, really. The someone who can create a jet can also create a piece of paper. That doesn't mean that it proves that it wasn't designed because one is easy to create and the other one is hard to create. It shows across the board that there's intention to everything that exists, right? And that's my point is when I say I can't think of anything designed is because that's what we have in this world. Humans design stuff and that's all our examples is what we design, right? But
No,
then when
no,
you look
no,
at
no, that's
nature,
not true. That's not true because everything out there in nature is also
that's what I
designed
was
according
getting
to
at. Yeah.
you.
So,
Yeah,
but I'm
yeah.
saying
So number one, that's begging the question. You're basically saying, well, I'm going to assume everything is designed, even though you haven't demonstrated that. It's kind of a circular argument. You're saying, hey, all of this is designed. We can compare it with because it's complex, it has to be designed because all of the complex things are designed. When I say something from nature that wasn't designed, like the weather or snowflakes, you say, no, that's designed as well. So it's kind of begging the question that all of these things were designed. As far as we know, there's no God involved with making my weather or making snowflakes, but you're just asserting that is the case in order to back up that evolution is or biological organisms are a designed thing. But in that case, like you're contrasting, does complexity with simplicity as a reason why we know that the human was designed. But the problem is that you've just nullified any comparison between the complex and the simple because you're saying, hey, we know the simple things aren't designed. We know that the complex things are. Humans are complex, therefore they're designed. If you think nothing is undesigned, then what are you comparing to?
because like for instance like in Darwin's day he just figured you get down to the sun it was just a blob, right? Like their idea of what existed
What?
was not nearly like because Darwin's day they would have never imagined that a cell has the most complex coding system that we couldn't even touch it, right? And it is a coding system. It's a brilliant coding system full of information that codes for every individual thing that is an attribute of us, right? So
what do you mean by it? What do you mean by that? Because we've mapped the human genome. The human genome famously did this. So when you say we can't touch it, I'm not sure what you mean.
Can't touch it.
Can't
Yeah.
touch this.
I don't. Do. I don't recall
Yeah,
what you're saying. When did that like in
well,
context?
you said the it's so complex we can't even touch it, and I don't know what
Yeah,
you
I know. I
mean
mean,
by that.
I'm by when I say we can't touch it, meaning we can't recreate it. So we can, like you said, we map it because it's information, right? There's information
Right.
there, and we can map it, and then we can utilize what's there, right? We can manipulate it because it's already information that's there. But as far as tracking it back, it shows us that there's a complex coding system of information that we can actually, it's so intelligent, sophisticated, we can actually sort it out to some degree, right? But it's still above us. We still don't understand a lot of it. And that's what I'm saying is it's showing intention and design. Like this is what we're seeing is information doesn't just show up in things. Codes don't just show up in things and do what cells do. That's what I'm saying. We don't have examples of random chance creating something that, and that's why I say complexity, because it is so sophisticated, right? And when you're dealing with stuff that's sophisticated, we only have examples of it coming from intelligence.
Well, there's a natural process to these things occurring, and sort of saying, well, it needs intelligence seems to be just a matter of faith. You don't actually have anything to back this up, and like I said, it's just incredulity to say, hey, it couldn't have naturally happened on its own through the processes that we very well understand in evolution. Because according to the literature and according to what we know about how this evolves, absolutely it could occur naturally, because you're trying to compare this to sort of a computer code, and it's not like a computer code. It is not electronic. It is a chemical operation. The four chemicals, TACG, they just do processes that affix to other chemicals naturally. There's no mind in this, there's no creator in this, there's nothing working that we can find. It just seems to be you're saying, well, it can't have happened by any other way but a designer. And I don't know why that is. It just seems to be incredulity that evolution could do this.
I'm not saying that I'm not saying that it can't have happened without a designer. I'm saying what we observe in the natural world, right? Like computer codes or like any other code or like any other book or set of information.
That's not the natural world.
No, I mean when humans, so I'm getting it. So humans, that's what we observe, that anything with coding or information must come from an intelligence. So then when we look at something in the natural world like a cell, and we see the reflection of organization, complexity, and coding, right? And even you said it's the chemical interactions, but it's still coding for things, right? It's called the blueprints.
What do you mean by information? Because I feel like you're sort of saying, hey, it's information like data that we have on computers, and that isn't the case. So you could say that information is the way that a pulsar pulses and tells us a lot about the star, for instance. But that wouldn't be information. That would be complex information, but it's only information because we interpret it that way. It's information to us. Now, the natural processes that make DNA, yeah, they're remarkably, incredibly complex and pass along this information, but the process is a chemical process. It's just a natural process. And I'm not sure how you got to comparing it with information that people put into computers and things like we have, say, the internet, for instance, that's an amalgamation of all of this information kind of thing. Like, how do you bridge that gap?
Because so we can go in to the genetics and we can find and locate, like in fruit flies, we can locate certain aspects of their anatomy in that cell. And then we can go and we can manipulate that in other fruit flies, right? Because it's always going to be in the same place, because that's what I'm saying. It's an organized, complex code that we're just tapping into and manipulating, but we have no idea how it was created. That's what I'm saying. When you have complexity, organization, and the sign of intelligence, the logical conclusion is that there's probably an intelligence that organized that information. And the fact that we can map it and track it and locate it and manipulate it shows that it's a code. It is a very sophisticated code, right?
Yeah, but that's like saying, well, you can go in and, sort of put two molecules together and make another, substance. And we can do that with any other molecules kind of thing. Well, therefore, that's information, because that's how chemistry works. Like if we change the way that it's being sort of read into the messenger RNA is transcribing it, then yeah, we can do that, sure. But there's no unnatural processes about that. There's no God involved. There's no we don't have to do anything that's other than biological, sort of biochem. I don't understand how you get to, well, the information must have been provided by a God. I don't get that.
Yeah, so it's because when we're looking at what humans understand in this world, every time we're dealing with something that is in line with what we observe there, so organized information that can be manipulated, tapped into, affected, right? Anytime we're dealing with something like that as humans, we know that something created it. We don't ever go and look at a book and assume that it just showed up there. We understand that those words are there, and then we look at a word and we can retrace that word. We go, oh, that's what that means. And then we look over there and we're like, oh, that's what that means. And we can manipulate that word. We can take letters off. It's the whole same idea with the genetics. We can go in there, we can manipulate it because it's information that we have tapped into. So
Yeah, it's not the same
showing
as a book. It's not the same as words.
It's more complex than a book. It's information far beyond our literary abilities. Like, it's not even comparable to.
What do you mean? We've mapped the human genome. We're starting to map other genomes of things. It's not beyond our ability to understand. Like, you're sort of taking this tact of
we're not even close to mapping everything in the genes.
Well, no, of course not. Of course not. Of course not. Nobody is saying that we are, but we're starting to understand how all of this fits together. And you seem to have this thing of, oh, well, it's all beyond us. Well, how do we actually, do research into genetics if it's all beyond us?
I think you're confusing what I'm saying, and maybe it's a language barrier. But when I'm saying like it's beyond us or we can't tap into it, I'm not saying you're taking it like I'm saying that we can't get into it. That's not what I mean. I mean the level of intelligence associated with it is far beyond anything we can comprehend. Can we create it? Can we recreate a cell from scratch?
What do you mean?
Can we create a script? Well, then it's beyond our capability.
Yeah, but the whole point is you have absolutely no evidence to show that intelligence is necessary. In fact, a lot of the evidence shows that intelligence wasn't used because of the inconsistencies and the problems with cells, the problems with replication, the problem with cancerous growth, the problems in that occur in cell replication and genetics are incredible. I mean, it's sort of this, well, it's so amazingly complex and amazing. Yeah, it also breaks down insanely a lot of the time. And it has all kinds of problems because it is not a designed thing. It is a natural process that quite often goes catastrophically wrong. And sort of, so this is sort of looking at chemical processes like they are some kind of grand design. It just isn't. It just is a natural chemical process that we can observe on a very, very simple level in, say, single cell primitive prokaryotes, for instance, that gets more and more complex as organisms get more and more complex. Like, the fact that we don't understand every part of it, yeah, it's incredibly complex, but that doesn't mean it's designed. And the idea that all complex things are designed, like the weather and like snowflakes and everything is designed, is just an article of faith. That's all it is. There's no evidence that that is the case.
Well, we don't have any evidence to the contrary, and that's my point. When we can come up with a way to allow random chance and nothingness to create a jet or create even a stick, like anything.
What do you mean? What do you mean by random chance and nothingness?
Because that's what your idea is, that like we talked about before. Sure, selective. It's all selective, and it's driven
deterministic is the name.
Deterministic, sure. But at the root of it, it's just random chance. It's just random happenstance that has no purpose, no meaning, right? It
doesn't matter. It's still deterministic.
Sure, but that's what I'm saying. So randomness spawned deterministic or whatever, right? But randomness and random chance doesn't ever spawn deterministic in our observable existence as humans. We can't watch that happen in front of us. The only place we can find these complex things happening, deterministic or random chance, is when we observe organisms. Otherwise, everything to the contrary is true when we consider the human's ability to create.
But that's not true, because the weather patterns are deterministic. They seem chaotic, but they are in fact deterministic. Random chance produces all kinds of patterns, which is then determined by certain natural states, right? Where you know, it is the weather seems random, but it's not. It is a deterministic process that
We're
all of
near.
the sort of things.
We're near the Q&A. Pardon my interruption. Just want to give you guys a heads up. 2-minute warning.
Okay. That all of these processes, they seem like they're random, but they're not. And even if random things occur, they're still deterministic because of selection mechanisms. Like the weather pattern may disperse because of certain, you know, areas that it goes over or certain places that it goes. It's still not just random. This is the thing. Yeah, the whole idea that it's random, and I don't know where nothingness came from. Like, what about evolution? Human evolution is nothingness. I don't understand that in the slightest.
Yeah, so I just want to say that you're invoking the natural, what we consider the creation, you consider the natural world. You're invoking that as your example of how organization and all that works. But when you look at it from a human perspective, right, we can't observe humanity watching something in the physical world be created, especially not even just as complex, just on its own, be created. We can't create anything in the way that we say that a cell is created. We don't have one observable evidence of humanity repeating what we say happened in nature. So that's the
Really?
whole point. Yeah, give me an example of something in humanity. And you're going to invoke the creation again, though. Give me a physical object that came
The
to be
internet.
like a cell.
The
The
internet.
internet wasn't designed.
No, no, you said this doesn't happen in the human world.
I'm asking you to give me an example of
No, no,
something
no,
with
no, no. You
complexity.
said that humans don't do this. We can't create anything similar. We don't have
I didn't
anything
say that at
that
all. That's not what I said whatsoever. I don't know why you keep going to
okay.
that.
So I go to weather. So you don't think weather's part of the natural world?
Of course it is. It's part of the creation.
Well,
I
you
said
just
that.
said weather is not part of the natural world.
I
Like
didn't
you
say
said
that at
that.
all. I
Okay, so
don't.
weather is part of the natural world.
Yes. You call it natural
Yes,
world. I call it creation, but it is the natural world. Yes.
yes.
Might be a good time to jump into the Q&A. We do have a good amount of questions, so I want to say, folks, thanks very much for your questions. We're going to move fast, and I want to let you know both of our guests are linked in the description box. In fact, Mark has an after show link that I've
I do.
included in the description box. You can click on that. As Mark said, everybody is welcome, whether you be Christian, atheist, or one of the many strange creatures in between. We're going to jump into this. Thanks very much for all of your questions, starting with James W. Says Mr. Curry. Thank you very much. Ember says, congrats, James. Thanks for your kind words. Says Mark, it looks like a maple leaf. What are they talking about?
Oh, yeah. It's sort of famous among sort of the circle of us people who debate evolution that a creationist once looked at a leaf and said, "Well, it looks like a maple leaf, so it must be a maple leaf." Funny thing was, it was a sweet gum leaf, which is, you know, not even in the same family as the maple leaf. It's just the tendency comes to look at something and say it looks like an X, so that is what it must be. And we know that that's not the case. I mean, we can see a mirage and say, hey, it looks like water. Sure, it does. That doesn't mean it's water. More investigation is required, is basically that, you know, when we say it looks like a maple leaf, we're saying more investigation required.
Okay, I get it now. This
Yeah.
one coming from appreciate it, Captain Pickles. That's I have a new soundboard. I'm so excited to use this. They say, why not verify the panelists? Oh, that's from the last debate. Sorry. By the way, folks, I've got to let me just be real for a second. Let me interrupt the Q&A just mentioned. It is true. We've had a couple of debates recently where it's like, we are going to work on improving the quality, starting with tonight's debate. Tomorrow's debate as well is going to be a strong one. Destiny and Dr. Ben Burgess. You don't want to miss that one. That's on the Israel-Palestine conflict. So I do want to say that was for a past debate. I won't name which one because that's not important. But the point is, we are working on upping our game at modern day debate. So thanks for that feedback. This one from Daniel Brundage. Brundage, thank you very much. Says, my situation has improved. I'm so glad to hear that, Daniel. And said, also, go Mark, in all caps. This one
Oh,
from
thank you.
Bitter Truth says, skeptic, why humans also wail? Even snakes have vestigial organs. I don't know
Snakes
what that
have
means.
vestigial. Yeah. Snakes have vestigial legs. Yeah. And the Bible predicted that as well.
You got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate it as well. Dr. Dino says, I'm curious why all the frauds and misidentifications brought up here are from 1920 or earlier when paleontology was in its infancy. Is this real odd or not? I think they're talking to you,
Well,
evidence of God.
I think back then there was more people that were allowed to speak against it, right? Nowadays, if you speak against evolution, you're not going to get funding. You're not going to get um, published. You're not going to get peer reviewed. That's the thing. They've pushed creation and intelligence design out of the equation completely. And then when you talk about it, they act like it's just craziness. And why isn't anyone doing the research? Because they won't allow it. But they just got better at covering it up and venting
You got
people.
it. This one from LJ says, has the Big Bang ever been repeated in an experiment?
No.
You got it. This one from Dr. Dino again says, for the record, Lucy's pelvis was originally found in an anatomically impossible, very warped form. It required reconstruction, and the vertebrae was tentatively assigned to her. That find has caused us to re examine every other fossil hominin in much more detail. It helped science going forward.
Yeah, and like the video showed it, that's what the gentleman said in the video, is that it resembled an ape. So yes, it was contorted and it needed to be fixed. They did say that it wouldn't work, but he said it resembled an ape. So I don't see why you wouldn't put it into configuration with what it resembled rather than turning into something else. And it also makes the point, if Lucy was contorted and destroyed, like you said, it's got us to examine everything. How come we don't know everything's like that? How can we trust anything if Lucy needed to be turned into a bipedal?
Dustin Buck says, if we are related to monkeys, then why do we find transplants from pigs work when monkeys are rejected? I think that's for you,
Good point.
Mark.
Yeah, it's just to do with the compatibility between organs. I don't see why that's a problem for evolution. Just, yeah, we don't usually need monkey. I mean, when you're saying monkey, I think you're talking about like monkeys and not chimpanzees. We don't use chimpanzee organs. We don't usually, kill endangered species in order to do substitutions. Plus, most monkeys are a lot smaller than humans. I mean, why we would try and get a monkey heart to push blood around a body 4 times the size is completely beyond me.
You got it. This one coming in from Ember says, evidence of God, what would convince you evolution is real?
I mean, what would convince me? I think God used a type of evolution that's maybe for a different time. But I think when we're dealing with human evolution, I think seeing perhaps, an ape turning into a human, like I'd be convinced. If I could go find an ape and it started talking to me, I'd be on board. Like that'd be the end of it. So
Some
Gotcha.
gorillas can sign. Does that help?
no, they are very intelligent, but I just mean like even when you track the human lineage back, right? You take all the ancestors, and as it goes back, we see more of a chimp. Chimps supposedly diverged a long time ago, but yet when we tracking human lineage back, we're changing the feet to a chimp's feet. We're changing the spine to a chimp's spine. We're changing the face to a chimp's face. It all comes back to the way a chimp looks in the end of the road for humans. Yet chimps supposedly went on their own journey all these years ago. So why is human evolution showing us all these chimps and saying that's what we
We're
were?
not. We're not.
Well, if you track it back, it's
humans
chimps.
are not descended from chimps.
I know they're
Chimps
not.
And humans split off.
That's what they say, but it doesn't show that in the supposed fossil record. It shows humans tracking back to what a chimp looks like.
No. That's not what a chimp looks like.
This one coming in from Bitter Truth says, skeptic, can you provide a scientific evidence that Eve, adult girl, can be born from man, namely Adam's ribs? You beta.
Beta!
I added the last part.
Oh, did you? Yeah, no, I mean, I think the whole the red marrow thing is pretty significant. How it was cloned. Obviously, I believe in God, and I believe God intervened and whatever He did to create them and modify the genetics. However, He did that. But I think it's very interesting that the rib actually could potentially do what God said it could do, and we've learned that long, long time later.
You got it. Thank you very much. This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Dustin Buck. I know we got that one. Bitter Truth says, Skeptic, why whale has lungs and mammary glands? Why does the whale have breasts? Hmm?
This is a mammal. I mean, I just because it's a mammal doesn't mean that it shapeshifted into a land mammal. I mean, it's a mammal. So what? Lives in the water and it's a mammal. I don't get it.
You got it. This one coming in from Dustin. Says, why was Littlefoot with the body of a quadruped but had the ears of a biped?
Is that for me or Mark?
I'm not sure. I would think it was for Mark, but I might be
What was the
wrong.
question? I
They
thought it
said,
was for
why was
you.
Littlefoot with the body of a quadruped but had the ears of a biped?
As far as I know, they didn't. I mean, they didn't have the body of a quadruped. They didn't even have the body of a knuckle walker. I don't. Yeah, that's just patently false.
You got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Dr. Dino, not that Dr. Dino, says, funny, I've seen that documentary. They go into a lot of detail regarding the reconstruction. It's not just guessing. We also have complete pelvises now.
Yeah, so I mean, according to the video, it looks pretty much like guessing. So I'm gonna look up Littlefoot. I'm gonna look up the pelvises, and I mean, I'm always open to correction. I didn't know that there was full pelvises that show that. I'm not saying like perhaps it fits into. We didn't even get into all the effects from inbreeding that I brought up, but perhaps it fits in there. But I'll look it up and see if the pelvis is there. Absolutely.
Do it.
You got it. This one from Bitter Truth says, skeptic, why there was fish bones and other animal bones, evidence of fire and tools with Homo habilis skeleton in caves.
Sorry to interrupt. You keep saying skeptic. Are you talking to me or evidence of God?
Oh, it's because evidence of God I put on the overlay. I put for under your name it says evolution, and then under his it says skeptic. It was short
Oh,
for
gotcha.
skeptic
Yeah,
of
sorry.
evolution.
Yeah, yeah,
I
sure,
was
sure.
I was
No
confused too.
problem.
So in Homo habilis, I'm pretty sure that the layer underneath Homo habilis also had tools. So, I mean, if it was Homo habilis that was utilizing these tools, why is it showing up in the layers underneath them as well, right? Um, and yeah, they lived in caves. I mean, a lot of and the Bible talks about Lot when he slept with his daughters. That incest was perpetrated in a cave. I mean, it's interesting.
This one from Yadian says, congrats, Dr. Coons. Thanks for your kind words. Says, good job presenting the case for science, Mark. Wow, you have a fan. This one from Joshua Janey says, the fact that you Googled, quote, retrovirus out of place, unquote, rather than, quote, how do retrovirus skip lineages, unquote, shows that the issue is you don't know the first thing about it. Skeptical research.
Yeah, no, I didn't just type into Google retrovirus is out of place and oh damn, and that was the end of it. I mean, I spent hours on that. I typed all kinds of things and I searched for them and finally had to go to the .gov website, the PubMed or whatever, and read through hours of retroviruses. So I mean, I'm sorry if it got confused and it was portrayed that I just gave up my search after one try. That's not how that went at all.
How many hours do you think the researchers did?
I mean, it's their career. I'm sure they did a lot of time, but at least they were honest about the retroviruses that they found. I appreciate that.
This one from Dr. Dino says, summary of paper sent to Mark. Nice cherry pick. I think they mean that are they saying that evidence of God is cherry picking?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you a chance to respond to evidence of God.
I mean, if he's referring to the ERVs, I mean that's your opinion. I think the ERVs. I understand what's going on there. I'm not discrediting the fact that they believe it's ERVs. I'm using their own research and their honesty to show that the ERVs are not what they're saying that they are consistently. So I'm not saying that ERVs don't show up this way or that they don't believe in it. I'm saying that ERVs out there show a divergence from the common narrative.
And with your vast experience of an hour, who could possibly think you got it wrong?
Well, the ERVs are there. So I don't know why in 1 hour, 20 minutes, 3 days, it's irrelevant. The ERVs are there and they're out of place. I feel it.
This one from Joshua Jamie says, who made the rule that if a universe is complex, there must be a creator? How do you know this isn't just the way a universe is?
Yeah, no, I mean, because it's just that's the point is that's what we went through for so long is if we can't give an example of some sort of intelligence or organization in our physical what we understand to be creation, then why should we assume that it happened any other way? That's the only thing. Like natural things are the only thing that we just go, well, it just happened by no chance, just did it. Nothing else in the world would we do that with.
You got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Robin Webster says, when your evidence supports the other side, LOL. I mean, they didn't say who it was for, so I don't know. But
Probably talking to me.
oh, you're not supposed to assume it was you, okay?
It's mostly atheists in here. So,
no, Robin Webster is actually an atheist, and I know her very well. She's a lovely.
Okay, it
person.
was evidence of God. Evidence of God. Go ahead, defend yourself.
I'm sorry. I didn't want Robin's super chat getting hijacked. I'm there for you, Robin. I'm there for you.
No, I disagree. I don't think the evidence that I brought forth. I wish we had got into the inbreeding because this is what you should do just to test that. Think of any attribute that the Homo genuses have, and then go look it up in genetic defects, and then go read about the Habsburgs, how genetic defects instilled themselves in the genes through years of inbreeding. I mean, it can all be explained by. We didn't even get into it.
You got it. This one coming in from Bitter Truth says, skeptic. People die by choking. Also, spine got fused, needs to go through surgery, in some cases, even appendix. Is this really intelligent design? I think they're saying like sometimes the appendix has to be removed. What do you think? Is this intelligence design?
I mean, intelligent design, God designed it intelligently, but God also says that it's a fallen creation, and he helps us understand why things deteriorate over time. If God in the Bible said it was perfect, my creation's done, it's perfect, you guys are perfect, then you could bring that up and I could be like, yeah, I guess the Bible is wrong. But the Bible doesn't say that it's going to be perfect. It says it's fallen, so it's in line with what we see.
Squid
Can I ask
super.
a question then? Can I ask a quick question then?
Yeah.
So why do we share a vitamin C deficiency with chimps then and other great apes?
Why do we share a vitamin C deficiency with or the inability to synthesize it with guinea pigs? But yet there's other creatures out there closer to us in relation that have the ability to synthesize vitamin C. But guinea pigs and fruit bats, we share it with those. Like, why is that? Yep. Just because something's in the lineage, I mean, that doesn't necessarily equate to relation. It's just, it happens.
Do you know that it's different sections out of the GLU gene that is missing in guinea pigs, but through the great apes, they're exactly the same?
So it shut off. They're this similar anatomies when it shut off, similar oxygen intake systems and similar ways they breathe. And vitamin C is an antioxidant. But what about the vitamin D? Like, why doesn't everybody have white skin, right? They say that the white skin was so that people could produce vitamin D or whatever. That's why our skin changed. So why doesn't everybody have it? Like, that's the same logic. Why didn't that pass on through the whole lineage? Why doesn't everybody have white skin? Right? Because it adapted for vitamin D. Just because something's present or capable in certain things doesn't mean it has to be capable in other things. Otherwise, it's relation. That doesn't make sense.
Well, I'll answer that. It's because that people who live in sunnier areas will get too much vitamin D, so they need to have melanin to stop themselves from absorbing too much.
So sunlight. Why don't they?
Whereas people in what do you mean?
Why? How can a dark person live in Antarctica then? And why don't they turn white? Right? It's the same
Well,
idea. Like,
okay. Let me answer that. If a person with very dark skin goes to one of the northern climates, they will probably need to take vitamin D supplements because they won't get all the vitamin D that they should. Great design.
This one
pollination.
coming in from Bitter Truth strikes again. They have it in for you, EOG. They say, skeptic, why female sea turtle rate is getting higher than males? How will you explain that? Mark, elaborate on this, please. Uh, Go ahead, Mark. What do you think? What's the point that they're getting at? And then we'll give you evidence of God. We'll give you a chance to respond.
I'm not sure. I haven't heard of this sea turtle thing. I'd probably imagine that sort of the um, prevalence of sort of sea turtles becoming endangered would certainly, more females would probably be a good idea. But I haven't heard of that one. If Bitter Truth can tell me, I'd be more than happy to hear it.
You got it.
Yeah.
Me neither. Go ahead. Evidence of God. You got something?
No, I have no clue. I'll look it up though. Sea turtles, female. I'll check it out. I'll know what he means once I do my single word Google search.
Okay, we'll jump into this next one from Sean. 666 says, isn't arguing that complexity requires a designer just a way of saying, quote, we don't understand this, so it must be designed. So basically, if you don't understand something, God therefore did it.
No, that's not see, and I struggle with this with atheists because they say that complexity in organization doesn't equate to designer intelligence, but it absolutely does. That's my whole argument here is, can you give me an example in the real world aside from the creation that shows intelligent complexity, organization, and information will arise spontaneously from no direction, random chance, or dictated random chance. Like, you can't give that example. So it's not me saying, oh well, it must be God. It's me using the observable evidence. It's actually the opposite side that's saying, oh yeah, well, so what that that's the only way we can conclude this or we can observe this. Doesn't mean it's God. Well, it does mean that there's more than likely an intelligent engineer behind it all.
Okay, I got to say something to this because you're basically saying, show me an example of the real world that's something that's designed, that's not designed, that's complex. But I'm going to assume that everything in the real world is designed. So you're basically setting it up as a no-win situation. You're setting it up as, it would be like me saying, well, everything is natural. There's, everything, there's absolutely none. But give me an example of something in the real world that was designed by God, as long as the real world is all natural and there is no God.
It's because, like, if I'm just looking at the table and all of a sudden a pen appears there, that's basically what the opposition is saying when they look at all the information, complexity, organization, and say, well, even though we only know that these things come to be through an intelligent mind, we're just going to assume that no intelligent mind put that information there. It just showed up. It's the same thing as looking there and waiting for words to show up on a paper. It's nonsensical.
No, but you're not getting me. You're basically saying that, show me something complex in the real world. When I do, you say, well, that was designed by God as well. So
Because
when
you're
I
using it.
asked you what isn't designed by God in the real world, you said nothing. So that means that anything I bring up, no matter what it is going to be part of not the real world, but the real world is designed. You're loading up the premises and begging the question so that I can't possibly give you anything complex that hasn't been designed by God. And like my example was the reverse, like show me something that's been designed by God in the real world, assuming that the real world has no God.
Because you're using it's like God didn't create this pen. I'll admit that. I'll acknowledge that.
Right.
Humans did it, right? So I want to see something that humans are capable that happens like you guys say that the creation happens. And the only way you can show me this example is by invoking the creation. I'm not asking you to invoke the creation. I'm asking you to give me an example in the physical world. Show me something humans design that just shows up there, because that's what you're saying basically when you say information and organization, complexity, the most sophisticated code in the history of humanity that we just barely tapped into.
Because you said, show me something that humans designed that just shows up in the natural world.
Exactly. Because that's what you're saying when you look at the creation.
But the natural world, by definition, is not human designed. Human design is artificial by definition. Again, you're setting up a premises that cannot, like, you're setting up this idea that, like, show me a married bachelor.
So you know exactly what I mean, though, Mark. You're using the word games because you know that you can't show me what I'm asking.
No.
So you're using the word games.
No,
you said natural, and that's games. Not. No, I'm saying I've made it very clear.
You're using a fallacy, and you're basically setting it up so there is no way to actually give you what you're asking for, because the criteria that you're asking for excludes anything that I can point to. Because you've already admitted that there is nothing that I can point to anywhere, not just in the real world, but anywhere in existence that you think isn't based upon your God. And that is begging the question. No. That's
I just said this pen. God didn't create the pen. I just made this so abundantly clear, right? You're pointing to the creation, and you're saying that doesn't have to be created. All that information that's far more complex than this pen just showed up by chance, and it doesn't need an intelligence. So but this pen needs an intelligence.
No. But you're assuming that all of the natural things requires intelligence. That's the thing. We see no evidence of intelligence behind weather. We see no evidence of intelligence behind all of these complex chemical structures that form. We see no evidence of intelligence behind evolution at all. But you're sort of saying because humans require intelligence to design complex things, then everything. Guess what? Humans design simple things as well. There's no, and simplicity is the hallmark of design, not complexity. We try to design things as simply as possible. Now, if that pen had sort of, bits and pieces coming off of it that have no use and just a remnants of where it used to be a pencil, then maybe you would have a point, but you don't. And the whole idea that everything in the world is designed by a God. So you have to point to something that's not designed by God, not designed by humans, but everything is either designed by God or humans. It's begging the question. It is a fallacy, and you are absolutely setting it up. So you're trying to make it so, well, you can't answer.
Because no, the reason you can't answer is because it's not observable, and you know that. There's nothing observable in I won't say natural, in the physical world from humanity that can conclude what we conclude about the natural world. And even like fine-tuning, when you're talking about the atmosphere, why doesn't every planet have an atmosphere, right? Because fine-tuning has been so precise that everything fit together perfectly, organized and complex, fit together perfectly to give us an atmosphere that then went on to give us our own weather conditions, right? That's why Mars doesn't have weather. Like there's all these different planets that are just useless. They don't have all the weather factors that we have. They don't have capability of producing life. They don't have all these things that are required in such a precise way in order to create this. It's the appearance of organization and design. Even Richard Dawkins calls it the appearance of design, because it is in our world, what we understand, things like that don't just show up. So when we look at the natural world,
but that's like saying water is the mirage is the appearance of water, and this is what we mean by look at the maple leaves. Like, just because something looks like something doesn't make it so. I made this very clear. We can look at a mirage and say, hey, it looks like water. It's not water. And just because something has the appearance of something doesn't mean it is that thing. And there's a lot of evidence as to why it is not designed, and some of the chat brought them up. There's other examples. There's the recurrent laryngeal nerve. There's problems with our appendix, as they brought up. There's problems with our spine. There's atavisms. There's all these things which show that it wasn't designed.
Yeah, but so like that's the thing that the atheists say, like, look at the trees. But when creationists say, like, look at the trees or look at the leaf, right? We don't mean
Mhm.
look at the tree. How can you not think that's created? What we're saying is when you zoom into that tree and you see that every single cell in that tree is packed with more information and organization and complexity, and it gives the appearance of design. That's what we're saying is the appearance. That's why we're saying, look at the tree. We're not saying, oh, wow, that
Mhm.
tree must be designed. We're saying when you zoom into that tree,
That's
how can you
exactly what you're saying.
deny? How can
That's
you
exactly what
deny
you're
that
saying.
it's designed?
Yeah. So it's pointing out a fallacy called sort of the argument from incredulity. It's basically going, well, look at the tree. It can't possibly be have come about by natural selection processes over time. But that's exactly what we find when we investigate. So all you have is this incredulity that it could not have happened. That's all you've got is a fallacy.
No, I don't
Sorry.
care about the tree. It's the information in that cell. That's what I'm pointing to. I don't care
Yeah.
what the tree looks like, how it works. The information that's packed in that cell tells us that it was designed. It tells us there was an engineer. It tells us there
No, it
was a
doesn't.
mind because we can't, like you said, we can't produce any example to the contrary. So why would we assume that information just showed up one day when we can't even produce anything of the sort in
So
our
you think
physical
a
reality?
disembodied mind did it? Can you show me a mind without a brain?
I I mean, it's a consciousness, right? It's God is a
Yes. Can you
consciousness.
show me a consciousness without a brain?
A slime mold. A slime mold appears to sort
Not
things out.
conscious.
It solves. How do you know?
Not conscious.
It solves mazes. It makes decisions. This is what the biologists say about it. How can you say that's not conscious? It's
Well,
displaying
it's
conscious
reacting.
behaviors, and it doesn't have a
No,
brain.
that's not consciousness.
Conscious behaviors. It's not aware of its surroundings, hence it's getting to the next point. It knows I'm here and I want
Mhm.
to be there. Is that not conscientious of your surroundings? If
Conscious
you
of
are
your
here and you want to
surroundings.
be there,
No.
I hate to
Consciousness is
interrupt us.
defined by having self-awareness,
self-awareness. I'm here, I want to be there. That's exactly what the slime mold does.
and it's what it's not doing.
It
I
is
wanna I
the
wanna
most
move us
efficient route.
over to the next question, just because we've been on this for a while. But I did miss this one, by the way. Sorry about that. Squid Super Hunk says this is when here we go. They say DNA is a code in the same way the iodine clock reaction is. It's not Turing complete. You can't program in DNA. It's just chemicals we've mapped to letters.
We can manipulate it, we can activate it, we can deactivate it, we can use it to we can go into like a fruit fly and we know where something is and we can go to it, we can activate it, deactivate it, manipulate it. This is a code. This is the complete opposite of what the questioner said.
Joe Brandon says, "Why do humans have tailbones?" I think they're saying they're
Tailbones,
vestigial.
it's required. Yeah, it's required to help us stand. I mean, tailbones aren't just about a tail. Like if we didn't have a tailbone, we wouldn't be standing.
That's not true. It's also so atavisms as well, where people grow tails because the genetics reset to a previous form is also a thing.
This one
That's a
coming in
This is right.
from,
specific one.
do appreciate it. I killed Earl. Good to see you. And I'm jumping around over a few, but we're going to go back to him. Says, I found and read the paper. In the conclusion, paraphrased, the ERVs analyzed, in parentheses, including PTERV1 and HERVKC4, arise by recombinational deletion of intervening viral genes, which are found in genomes of thousands of animal species. I can read that again if you want. It's a lot.
Yeah, read that one again.
They
Yeah.
said they found the paper that was talked about. Say in the conclusion, it paraphrasing it, they say in the conclusion it said that the ERVs analyzed, including these particular ones of PTERV1 and the other, arise by recombinational deletion of intervening viral genes, which are found in genomes of thousands of animal species.
Okay, so it's so they're giving a an example or their best reason as to why these things are showing up in such a way that they are, right? That's my conclusion from it. They're not going to admit that there's a problem with this. It goes against their narrative. So they're going to try to figure out ways that they can explain these things. And I'm sure they've done great at it, but it still doesn't change the fact that the ERVs in this what I presented are in such a way that is the opposite of what is being taught that ERV should be behaving. Right. That's the point. But I'll read it. I'll go read a little bit more on it. I'll read the end of it and read the conclusion.
I'm just saying I would trust them over the person that's done an hour's reading on the subject.
Well, how long was he reading it for? So you're trusting him because he's an atheist. What did he spend the duration of the debate?
I killed Earl.
I didn't know that.
He spent
plenty of this.
A woman.
The duration of the debate, which is less than the time that I did. But you're just going to say I trust him?
I would trust the scientist who wrote the paper over somebody that's done an hour's reading.
Of course you would.
This one from Sean.
Why wouldn't you? That's the question.
Because there's a narrative, and that's the thing is, why don't they just take these and acknowledge what they are? They're out of place. Why don't they try to explain it?
Because they're not out of place.
They are out of place. They didn't explain it. They gave a conclusion for it.
Their conclusion was
but that's what they do. Some ERVs are this, but then the ones that fit our narrative, they're real and they're the viruses. But these ones over here that don't fit our narratives, they're just randomly showing up in places, but they only hit the same place once. Like
that's a conspiracy.
It is a conspiracy, in my opinion. Okay. Yeah, the whole atheistic worldview, infiltration of science is a conspiracy, in my opinion. Yeah.
Even though there's tons of Christian scientists got it.
Juicy.
That they want to keep their job.
This one coming in from Joshua Jamie says, coding can happen from a mind, in parentheses, a computer, and naturally, a tree. Until you prove a God coded that tree, we can use it as evidence that coding can happen naturally.
Yeah, you just said it, right? Coding can happen the internet or a computer. Yeah, but an intelligent put that coding in. A computer is never going to just show up and code itself, right? Someone has to write these programs and code these computers. Then the computer will go on to do what it's designed to do. And that's what we observe in the natural world. Things being coded and then doing what they're designed to do. It's the only examples we have are intelligence behind it.
This one coming in from, do appreciate it, Sean 666 says, if God is real, why haven't we physically seen a God create one single thing?
Well, I mean, that's subjective. Like we've seen God. There's billions of people through history that claim that they've seen God working in their life or healing people or whatever. So it depends on what you mean when you say that. And God explains that he created the world, he created the universe, he created everything in it. So, I mean, if you're looking at it from that aspect, that's the point, is if you can't give examples as to how natural world shows apparent design through its information complexity and apparent design, like Richard Dawkins puts it, or illusion of design. If you can't establish or show that in our physical reality, then that is telling us that something designed the natural world, and we call it God. Religious people attribute it to God.
You got it. This one coming in from Joshua Jamie says, EOG, until you prove a tree is designed by a god, we can use... We got that one. Sean 666 says, isn't Earth's many flaws clear evidence that the idea of a, quote, intelligent designer is just delusional nonsense?
Okay, fair enough. That's your opinion. I mean, I think that's the thing when people say that. I think he said that the Earth is. Did he say the Earth was a bad design or something? Is that what I got from that? Maybe
basically,
but
not in those exact words.
The point.
Yeah, so I hear that all the time. Like even with Mark today, he's talking about the eye, right? And everybody says that. It's so, but that's the thing. Like to create, like the eye is so complex and beautiful and well designed. The fact that there's ailments to it doesn't take away from how beautiful it is. It's like if you get a brand new motorcycle and, something breaks in it. Are you going to be like, well, that's not a good motorcycle? No, you're going to go fix it and move on. There's things that happen in physical creations, and we don't just dismiss it like, oh, well, that must not have been designed because the muffler broke, right? Like it's nonsensical in my opinion.
Well, because I was brought up, I'll sort of clarify that I didn't actually mention ailments of the eye. I'm talking about the physical way the eye is wired, like it's wired backwards. So there's got to be a spot for the nerve fibers to go from the retina. So it actually goes through and creates a blind spot right under our eye because we can't see there. It's in actual fact, the octopus eye is way superior and has better wiring as part of convergent evolution. It evolved differently and is vastly superior to us and does not have the blind spot that humans have.
Yeah, and eagle eyes as well. There's lots of examples of eyes that are more productive than humans, but I mean, no, the Bible doesn't say that humans have the best eyes. So I'm fine
Well,
with human having
it's
eyes that aren't as good
it's
as an
just
octopus.
it's just interesting that you sort of claim everything that works well as evidence of design,
Like
but
what?
dismiss. Well, you're sort of saying it's very complex and it's amazing what our eyes
Yeah.
do, and it's amazing what this does, and it's amazing what that does. Sure, but all of the flaws with it, you just take as, well, that doesn't matter. Like,
No, I take
why
it.
is that not
I'm
evidence against design?
because I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that because the Bible clearly states that we're a fallen design. It doesn't say we're perfect. I said that before in the debate. If the Bible says you're done, you're perfect, you're just fantastic, you're never going to die, and everything on you is just brilliantly done and it's over, you never have to worry again, then yeah, I would say, well, there's a problem with the eye. But the Bible doesn't teach that at all. And when I'm talking about complexity in design, I'll take the good with the bad. What I'm saying about that is that gives the clear appearance of a creator or an intelligence from what we can observe in the reality that we live in. Whereas an eye having flaws, the eye is still so complex and designed and has information in every cell, and it's a brilliant design, really. The only reason we say it's not brilliant is because we want to disprove God. Otherwise, we all know
Yeah,
that the eye is absolutely genius, right?
I don't care what the Bible says at
I
all.
know.
I don't care. But I think that when you're making the argument that all of this good design means it's designed by a creator, then obviously, where things are inefficient and lacking any kind of design purpose, you have to wonder why it was designed in a way that is detrimental.
This one coming in from who appreciate it. Joshua Jamie says consciousness is not making decisions. It is your awareness of you making those decisions. You repeatedly get basic terms wrong. Oh my goodness. EOG, they're coming at you.
Yeah, so that's what I said about the slime mold is if a slime mold is here and it wants to be there, and the best way that it can get there, it knows to sort out the most efficient route. This is something being self-aware. This is a form of consciousness. It's making decisions and it's deciding that it's here. I want to be there. This is how I'm going to get here, and I'm going to use the least amount of energy as possible by going this way. It's self-aware. It's undeniable. Even Aaron Raw admits that the slime molds are self-aware. Go watch his videos on it. It's clearly a consciousness. Like, I don't get it.
This
Yeah, I'm
one
not so sure that's the case, but I'll certainly look for it.
Yeah.
from Joshua Jamie strikes again, says the tree is literally proof that coding can happen naturally. Until you prove the tree was designed, it will forever be an example of natural coding.
Natural coding. Exactly. Coding. Until you can prove that a code doesn't need a coder, then I'm fine with that. But you even said the trigger word or the whatever word in your question. You said until you prove that the code in the tree was designed. Well, yeah, the code. Until you can prove that a code just shows up out of nowhere, then once you can do that, then I'll buy it and I'll say, yeah, maybe the tree isn't what it wasn't designed. Like, I'll be honest. So I think we should all be honest in our
Yeah,
conclusions.
it's not like computer code though. It works more like an instruction set than a computer code. You do know that, don't you?
Sure, it's still information that can be manipulated, addressed. If we can tap into it because it's organized in such a way that we can utilize it and manipulate it, then it is a code, and it is a very sophisticated code. It's even more sophisticated than computer coding to an extent, right? There's aspects of it that are just like it's a brilliant code. I don't understand why you guys don't agree with that. I don't understand
because it's
it.
not the same as something like computer code.
Well, because it's
working
natural.
on a chemical process. Well, it's working
Yeah.
on a chemical process. It's not like somebody said, it's not Turing complete. So it is not sort of the way a computer passes information through to it. It is simply a natural reaction to the chemicals that go down. And sometimes these chemicals have problems, like under certain circumstances, uracil will stick to uracil. It's not supposed to be how it works, but that is what happens. Because it is a chemical process and not something like a computer code.
Okay, fair enough. It's still a chemical code. It's still chemicals. It's still being coded through the chemical reactions, right? It can still be manipulated, even though whatever it's made of and whatever makes it up and whatever runs the operating system is irrelevant because it's still displaying the traits of a sophisticated code, irregardless, no matter which way you look at it.
But under that definition, I could say the pulses from a pulsar is conveying information to us, so it's code.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. The what from a what?
The pulses from a pulsar, like the rate at which it flashes light and the strength of the light and what color it is and what wavelength it's on. Under your definition, that would be a code as well.
Sure, I agree with you. Could you ever get Morse code from a random light in the sky? If you saw Morse code blinking at you from across the sea, would you think, oh, the sun must be acting weird tonight? Or would you think somebody's over there? That's why they created Morse code, to identify I'm here, right? That's what it's all about. It's an identification because it's intelligence manipulating the light. Right?
DNA isn't Morse code.
No, see, you know exactly what I mean. You're just contorting it. You were the one that was talking about the lights.
This one coming in from Joshua Jamie strikes again. They're coming after you, EOG. They want to fight. They said, you need to prove the coding of the tree was designed. You don't get to claim the code was designed just because it's a code. You need to prove that all these codes were designed.
Yeah. So that's the thing. We observe the code, we observe the information packed into this cell. In every single cell, a sophisticated code that can be manipulated and interacted with because it's a sophisticated code. We see that in the cells of the tree. That is only explained in our physical world through interactions from an intelligence. Therefore, the one saying that there is no intelligence required to create something that in the observable reality only is created by an intelligence, the burden of proof would be on the one making the claim, which is not me, because I'm just following the observable evidence that a code is made by a coder. You guys are the ones that are saying, no, a code doesn't have to be created by a coder, but you don't have an example. So the burden of the proof is on the one that's denying the evidence, not the one that's following it.
No, evidence of God, that is not how that works. It's the positive claim that has the burden of proof. So if you're claiming that the code was designed by God, you're making the positive claim. I'm saying prove it.
Because you're making the positive claim that we don't need a coder to create a code. Give me an example of that, other than invoking the natural law. Give me an example of that, because I'm on the side of observable evidence. You're the one that's making a claim that codes don't need a coder. So why is the burden of, whether it's God or not, maybe it's not God, maybe it's Allah, maybe it's the Hindu God, who knows, right? But the point is I'm saying that it's observable evidence of a code makes a coder, or a coder makes a
What
coder.
I'm saying is chemical processes don't need a coder, is what I'm saying.
But it's not, it is a code, though. You're saying that a code doesn't need a coder.
That's yes, but your definition of code includes natural processes, which we know don't need a coder. Like,
can you interact with it and manipulate it and read it?
Well, sure, we can read it.
Okay, it's a code, man. That's what a code is by definition.
Okay,
there you go.
Then we have examples of code being produced with no coder, because we don't need a coder for a pulsar.
This one coming from
Sorry.
Bitter
Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
bitter truth says, hey skeptic, vestigial is an evidence of evolution. Disprove it.
I mean, it depends what you mean by. They said that the appendix was vestigial. Like that's the thing. They're always saying something's vestigial, right? They say that the whale, the points that a whale uses to breed is vestigial. So it's a subjective. You say everything's vestigial. Like prove it, right? Just because they say something is vestigial means nothing to me. They all have productive uses, and like the appendix, they said it's vestigial, it's useless, and then we find out that it's very important. And there's lots of examples of these vestigials through history that we learn are very important. Same with the tailbone; it's not vestigial. Well, I just looked it up. I was absolutely right. We need it for balance. We need it to sit down. It's a vital component to our ability to stand as bipedal humans. It's necessary. The tailbone is not vestigial. You can't prove that there was a tail there because we need it. It's part of our anatomy that's a necessity for us to walk. So vestigials are subjective, right? Like, I don't know, that's my opinion on it.
You got it. Let me leave you this last one. This one came from way earlier. Tommy Boy 65 says, this question is for evidence of God. Without accepting the fact of evolution, how do you propose we make effective medicines and vaccines?
Yeah, see, that's a contortion of so evolution, the word evolution is it's been hijacked. Every time you hear evolution, it's got to be associated with evolution theory. Like viruses and bacteria and all those things, they evolve in the sense that they mutate and they adapt to their surroundings. Nobody's saying that these things don't mutate and adapt to their surroundings. This is how God instilled the genetic coding to behave this way, right? It's the same thing with the birds right now with the climate change. We're seeing birds within a decade, they're growing longer wings and getting shorter bodies. We're seeing a macro evolution, like right in front of us. But this is instilled in the coding of the genetics. This doesn't necessarily mean that bacteria had to have evolved in the sense of Darwinianism evolution just because it adapts to its surroundings and adapts to viruses. Like it's two completely different topics, in my opinion.
This one coming in from Bitter Truth strikes again says, hey, skeptic, why is there a tailbone in hominins, in chimps, humans, and bonobos?
Because they all need it for balance. Like when I was explaining how it's useful for a human and how it's useful for them. And animals that have tails, their tails come from this point, and their tails are used for balance, right? So it's and a part of the anatomy of species that is used for balance, whether they have a tail or whether they don't. But that doesn't mean that the ones that don't have it had a tail at one point. It doesn't equate to that at all. It's
Yeah,
Joshua
so there's
Jamie
certain
strikes
ligaments
again.
in the
This
tailbone. There's certain ligaments in the tailbone which help you sit. It isn't essential for walking. You can live a full life without it.
this
it's
is
uh it's
go ahead.
it's essential for balance. It helps us with our balance. It helps us stand. It helps us move. It helps us walk. It's an essential. Perhaps if you take it out, it doesn't. I don't know. What I'm seeing here, it's essential for our balance. So I'll look more into it and see if humans do good without it, but I highly doubt it.
This one from they're just rapid fire here. Joshua Jamie says the example of a code being naturally occurring is the tree. Until you prove the tree code was made by a coder, then it's an example of a natural code.
The natural code. It's an example of a natural code, right? Like that's the thing is we're using the words that describe something that we can only observe to be created, and we're using these terms like code, right? And it's the blueprints of life, it's information. Like these are all words that we're using to describe these things, but then when it comes time to look at reality and say, well, does can a code come about by its own? The only time you can point to anything is to point to the natural world, and that's what we're discussing. So give me observable evidence in reality, and then I'll agree with you about the natural because we're differing on that point.
This one from Sean 666 says, evidence of God. I don't like you. I,
James, did you add that? You added that one. No, I'm
no,
just joking. I'm teasing.
it was,
Wow.
I don't even understand what I think they meant pathological liar. I don't, if they
Oh,
called you a
huh. Pathological
pathological
liar.
liar.
Well, thank you. I guess I don't know how to respond to
Okay.
that. I honestly believe what I'm saying. If it comes off like I'm lying, I truly believe in God and I truly
Well,
believe what I'm arguing. So,
I gotta
um,
say, I don't think you're lying. I just think
yeah,
you're wrong. That's all. But I don't think
exactly.
he's
Mm,
lying.
I
But
like
I
I
do
that.
think you've
believe it.
listened. Well, I think you've listened to sort of AIG in a lot of places that do
I don't
not
go to
make good
AIG. I don't.
arguments.
I don't. I've honestly
Creation Ministry International, maybe.
don't listen to any
Something.
of them.
Okay.
Is
I don't. I
AIG
honestly
a
don't.
form of artificial intelligence? AI, like
No,
the,
unfortunately
no,
not.
I'm just teasing.
There's no intelligence involved in AIG.
Oh my gosh, Mark.
Just throwing
But
shade at AIG.
we love I'm trying to think. Have we had anybody from AI? G? We'd love to if they'd like to come
Ooh,
on. I'm trying to think. I don't think we have. I'm surprised we haven't.
I don't think so. McClatchy's from there. Was is McQueen from there? I think you've had McQueen on once. Isn't
No,
McQueen
not
from
even not even McClatchy is. McClatchy is like kind of a critic. Because he's intelligent
right?
design, but he's not AIG. Because he's not
Oh, gotcha.
like a
Okay.
creationist of any type. I don't think we ever have. Which is I'm just kind of like, wow, that's weird. I'm
Yeah, it's
surprised we
weird.
have. This
Reach out.
one, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying. Yeah, I should reach out. See, maybe they'll come up. That'd be
Yeah,
neat.
Nathaniel Jensen was on non sequitur show like 7 years ago or something,
Hmm.
and we never had him. So we'll have to try to reach out. Maybe we'll see if we can get you a debate, Mark, and maybe
Okay.
even Nathaniel Jensen. I don't know. It'd be pretty epic. But
That'd be cool.
want to say, folks, our guests are linked in the description. What are you waiting for? This was a great time. I honestly love being here. I'm sad that we have to go. It's always sad when we have to wrap up. But I do want to say we appreciate our guests. Check out their links in the description. What are you waiting for, folks? There's an after show on Mark's channel. Want to say thanks everybody for being with us. Thanks most of all, Mark and EOG. It's been a true pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thank you so much.
Stick
A
around.
lot of
I'll
fun.
be back in just a moment, folks. For just a few minutes, I'm going to do a quick post-credit scene, update you on new debates coming up. So stick around. I'll be back in just a moment. Amazing. My dear friends, want to say thanks so much for being here. Guys, this is always fun. I really do enjoy this. I have gotten your feedback in the old live chat saying, James, the soundboard, you got to turn it down a little bit. I am glad that you told me that. I didn't know that, so I will be doing that. And I am excited about this. It's so hard for me not to be like a child over here with toys like this, like the soundboard. But want to say we really do appreciate our guests. For links in the description, that includes at the podcast. So if you're listening at the podcast, you can check out our guest links. And want to say it's good to be back, folks. I've missed you. I really enjoy this seriously, I love modern day debate and I love getting to host myself. And Ryan gets to host everything. But here, let me see. I'm going to let me know if if this helps the volume, by the way. So I'm going to turn the volume on the computer down significantly. And hopefully, I'm going to see. I think this will help, but I don't know. So you got to let me know if this fixes the soundboard so that it's not blasting out your ears like it has been so far tonight. So let me try. Let me see if I can find my favorite buttons here. This is a cool soundboard. I can like decide what my soundboard will be. I design my own, but so it's got like all my favorite quotes. So it looks pretty loud on the OBS meter. I'm trying to figure out how I could turn this down. By the way, we do have a Discord. So check out the Modern Day Debate Discord link in the description box below if you haven't already. Let's see here. Yeah, it looks really loud. So tell me if that's blowing out your ears. And I'm working on this though. I've got to tell you, we've got some cool stuff coming up. Seriously, I'm going to be traveling a lot this summer just to kind of recharge after finishing the doctorate. I got to be honest, I'm pretty tired. It was 6 years, and coincidentally, I started the doctorate, or I started modern day debate the same year that I started the doctorate. So for 6 years, I've been working really hard on getting the doctorate and then also building up modern day debate on the side as a fun passion project, which happened to become way bigger than I ever thought it would. And so I'm excited about that. But I am also tired because, it's just anything when you pour your heart into like two different things and I'm just like, okay, I'm going to take a little time to relax, have a little more balance, do a little traveling, and just recharge. And I think it'll be very instrumental. I'm going to do it for fun, but I'm going to say, I think a nice thing about that is that probably toward the end of the summer, I'll be kind of like more amped up and we'll get modern day debate really rolling this fall. So a lot more epic debates as well as DebateCon 5. So our fifth debate conference is in the works. Believe me, folks, we are working on this. It's going to be epic. And don't worry, we've got things going on in the background. It's going to work out. We are excited about that. But I want to say hello to you in the old live chat before I go. It's getting late here, so it's already like 9:45 here, and I've got to try to get to sleep a little earlier from now on. But I want to say thanks for coming in, Bishop. Good to see you there in the old live chat. Thanks for your kind words. And then Mr. New 86. Thanks for that feedback on the soundboard. The Knowing Newsletters got to see here. Let us pray, amen. Thanks for being here. Yellow Bear, thanks for coming by. King Mason KY, thanks for having us. Thanks for being with us. And Aragorn, Gorn, thanks for dropping in. MXXXD, happy to have you with us. And want to say thank you guys for all of your support. Mark Thompson, see you there in the old live chat. Thanks for being here. Sammy McBride, good to see you. As well as David Mueller. Am I saying it right? David Mueller or Mueller? As well as, let's see, Drop YouTube. Happy to have you with us. And Adir Est Fasir. Thanks for coming by. Want to say, love you guys. Thanks for making this fun. I'm excited about the future. We have big things planned for Modern Day Debate. And like I said, including DebateCon 5, which because it is a political election year, DebateCon 5 will be very politically oriented. So we're going to have probably way more political debates at it. We're going to shoot for like 4 or 5, maybe like three or four really big political debates and then maybe one or two religion debates, not too many. We do love those. We're still going to have plenty of them, but because it's election year, we're like, hey, let's really kind of bring relevant debates that people will enjoy. So thank you guys for all of your love and support. Excited about the future. Appreciate you. Keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. We will see you next time. And hang in there in the meantime. I'm gonna miss you guys. I miss you guys a lot. So we're gonna make it. So bear with. Let me see here. Okay, so let me look at what are my favorite hmm. I'm trying to think of do we have a happy Oh yeah. That's right, because of our new sponsor, Soylent. Very excited, you guys. Is we can now I hope that doesn't blow out your ears. It shows, let me see. It's not like you guys let me know if it's really bad. Let me see if I can. Oh, there, that helped. Okay. Let me do it now. I'm going to do it again. Oh, that one was pretty loud. How was this? Okay, that was reasonable, right? Uh, that one's that one's fine, right? Let me know which of these is super loud or maybe not too loud. Let's try turning this down a little bit more. Oh, yeah, I know what it was this whole time. Okay, this is my fault. So let's do the soy boy one. Yeah, now you can barely hear it. There we go. Right where we want it. Soy boy. Okay. But thanks for coming by and me enjoying these toys. All right. See you at the next one, which is tomorrow night. Destiny and Dr. Ben Burgess on the Israel-Palestine conflict. I'll see you there. Thanks for all your support, folks, and we'll see you at the next one.